accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, and be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board, town hall, and mailing to the officially designated newspapers a list of the meeting dates annually, indicating that this meeting would take place at the town hall at 7 p.m. on Monday, August 19, 2019.
Mary McNett.
Here.
Craig Plattner.
Here.
Jenny Sharma.
Here.
Joyce Siegel.
Here.
Wolfgang Torres.
Here.
Chairman Joseph Stein.
Here. All right, a couple of things before we begin. On the table in front of me are copies of tonight's agenda on one pile and a one-page summary of how we run these meetings. So you are free now to come forward and take one of each. You'll have plenty of time to read them both. Is it finally got? Okay. If you have, first of all, let me welcome all of you here tonight to the Millburn Township Zoning Board of Adjustment. We do the best we can. We're your neighbors here in town. If you don't like what we do, either because we approve an application when you're here as an objector, or the other way around, we deny an application. If you are an applicant, you have the right to appeal. Your appeal, given the New Jersey statutes and the municipal ordinances here in Millburn, that appeal is directly to the Superior Court of New Jersey, not to the Township Committee. And take it from someone who has practiced law a long time, if you're going to the Superior Court, do it with an attorney. It's tough enough with an attorney. It's very difficult to do it without one. Okay, we have some work to do before we get to the applications, but I do want to mention that there's going to be a slight change in the agenda as it is printed. The agenda has the Fidelco matter first. We've heard that matter previously, and it's come back before us again tonight. But what we're going to do tonight is we're going to skip to calendar 3701-19, which is 2 Browning Road, Hayden and Allison Stewart. Now, what we're going to do with respect to that application, there is a question about whether or not the matter is properly before the board. There's an issue about notice. We're going to hear from the applicants first, and then the board will decide whether or not it is going to hear the matter tonight based on what the applicants tell us and what we hear from our attorney. If in fact we are going to hear the matter, the matter will relate back to its number 2 spot on the agenda, and we'll proceed with the Fidelco matter. If the board is not going to hear the calendar 3701-19 tonight, we'll ask the secretary of the board when there is an opportunity for those applicants to return. But first, before we get into anything to do with the applications, we have one set of minutes that were submitted to the various members of the zoning board by email from our secretary. She is now going to indicate what changes she has made based on comments that she has received from board members who reviewed that set of minutes. And once we hear from her as to what changes she has made, this is the meeting of July 15th. I will ask her to indicate which members of the board were present on July 15th, and only those members of the board who were present on July 15th can make a motion to approve those minutes, second the motion, or vote on the minutes. So Eileen, can you tell us what changes you've made based on the comments you received?
Page one, the second set of minutes were actually, the motion was made by Wolfgang, first, not counting himself. Page 37, the Fidelco matter, line 1647, the second sentence should read, he asked that, comma, due to the absence of two members tonight. And then going on to the end of the sentence, after at the May 20th, 2019 meeting, we deleted the words, he asked that, and just continued with the matter we carried, and that was to allow council members. Page 38, line 1666, we changed the word property to dwelling. Line 1670, at that time, we replaced she with the applicant. Page 39, top of the page, the paragraph starting with Joseph Steinberg, that was removed. That's in there. Line 1724,
That partial sentence was removed.
correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Line 1724, would not negatively impact the surrounding properties and were supportive of increasing the roof line. And then on page 40, line 1758, Richard Keller, PK, the semicolon was removed and replaced with and. And line 1781, however, comma, the applicant instead of it. And then final correction is on page 41, line 1824. The applicant's property is steeply sloped. And that's it.
And can you tell us which members who are here tonight were present the night of the July 15th?
Mary, Jody, Joy, Steve, Wolfgang, Jessica, Joe.
Okay, only those people whose names were mentioned can participate in the approval of the minutes. Mary, I want to thank you for giving your comments on those minutes. You beat me to it, and it wouldn't have made any difference anyway, because you are the master of proper language and proper English and all the rest. Okay. So is there a motion from one of the individuals who is named to approve the minutes of July 15th, 2019?
I move approval of the minutes of July 15th, 2019.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes of July 15th, as corrected, have been approved. We have two memorializations tonight. One is calendar 3694-19, Victor and Greta Lander at 10 Wyndham Road in Short Hills. Have you all had an opportunity to review those, that particular memorialization? And if so, before I ask Eileen to let us know who can vote on it, are there any additions or corrections? Eileen, who's eligible here?
Mary, Jody, Joy, Wolfgang.
Those four. All right, remember now, only those four people can make a motion, seconded, or vote on the memorializing resolution in calendar 3694-19. Is there a motion to approve?
Move calendar 3694-19 for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mary McNabb,
Yes.
Jody Sherman.
Yes.
Joyce Hill.
Yes.
Nick Anthony.
Yes.
The next one is 66 Minnesink, calendar 3703. The owner is 66 Minnesink LLC. Who's eligible here?
Mary, Jody, Joy, Steve, Joe, Wolfgang.
Are there any additions or corrections to the memorializing resolution in calendar 3703-19? If not, will one of the named individuals like to make a motion to approve that memorializing resolution?
Move approval?
Is there a second?
Second.
Mary McNabb,
Yes.
Jody Sherman.
Yes.
Joyce Hill.
Yes.
Steve Tucker.
Yes.
Wolfgang Torres.
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes. Okay, now we are at the point in our, oh, by the way, I forgot to say to all of you, if you have, I know this is so old that it's going to be donated to the Smithsonian, but if you have these little gadgets with you, first of all, I'm going to ask you to put them on mute. Second, if you have them on mute or vibrate, and you get a telephone call or a text or whatever, and you absolutely have to respond to it, I'm going to ask you to use one of these three doors, go to the rear of the building, plenty of room back there for you to take your calls, do your texting or whatever, and then you can return to the hearing room. Okay. We have now, in accordance with what I indicated earlier, we're going to call on Hayden and Allison Stewart, calendar 3701-19, and this is for the purpose only of determining the issue as to the notice. So if you come forward and be sworn by the court reporter.
Allison Stewart. You need to speak up so it can be picked up by the microphone.
Allison Stewart, ALLISONSTEWART.
James Hayden Stewart, JAMES HAYDENSTEWART.
Okay, so what happened with regard to the notice?
So we made a mistake. On the list of names that we were provided, which we brought, there was a stamp at the bottom, which we thought was a stamp of approval of the Essex County Board saying like, yes, this list of 200-foot property owners is correct. And I guess that's just, we're new to this. I think it was on the list of all of our neighbors, so we recognized some of the names and the addresses, so it kind of didn't seem like one of those, but we missed it.
And you didn't notify them at the same time you notified
We
the other?
didn't notify them when we sent the rest of the certified mail letters. We did try to call a week before to make sure that we had covered all our bases. And I know it's summer and people are on vacation, and that, is totally understandable. We still missed the name. As soon as it was clear to me that we missed it, we did everything we could to rectify it within what was allowable. So we found the contact. We reached out to the gentleman. We sent the notice, I believe it was last Wednesday. And we said, this is a notice. We were supposed to send this to you sooner. My apologies, but here it is. And then we received an email back from him this morning saying, I've received this, I've evaluated it, I have no comment, this doesn't interfere with anything.
And who was this gentleman?
Mr. Antonio with the Essex County Planning Board.
What is his position with the board?
He's the, I have his email with his signature.
You have a copy of his email?
I do, I have several.
Well, we're going to mark a copy, just on the top of it, put down A-1,
Sure.
A1, with today's date,
Sure.
and hand it to our secretary.
Sure. And just to answer your question, he's the county planner.
County planner.
Yes. But I
And
did.
what does that document say? Read it into the record.
Sure. Allison, we have received and reviewed the notice of hearing for your development application scheduled to be heard by the Board of Adjustment of the Township of Millburn. It has been determined that there are no identifiable impacts to Essex County facilities at this time, and there will be no comments made. In addition, please accept this email as the ECPB's waiver of the formal notice for this zoning board application. David. And then I can read his signature if you want.
All right, a copy of, the copy that was marked is going, all right, so now I'm going to call on our attorney, Gail Fraser, who's seated to my right, as to any comments that she may or may not have with respect to the question of whether this, quote, waiver, end of quote, was proper.
Mr. Chairman, notice is jurisdictional and it requires 10 days notice, 10 days prior to the hearing. The county planning board appeared on the list. I think it's clear that notice was not sent to the county planning board within the time required by law. I am aware of the fact that an email has been provided which appears to come from the county planner, not directly from the Essex County Planning Board, although it references that they are willing to waive notice. Nonetheless, the only case I'm aware of, an Eisenberg case that talks about waiver, in that particular instance, the objector actually appeared at the hearing and was prepared to participate and did not raise at the hearing lack of notice as an issue. And under those circumstances, the court ruled that the objector waived the notice issue. That's not the case here. Essex County Planning Board is not present. It's clear that notice was not provided to them, and I am not prepared as the board attorney to sign off or approve this waiver. As I mentioned, notice is jurisdictional. If the applicant wishes to proceed, and if the board is inclined to let them proceed, then they do so at their own risk, understanding that whatever decision the board may reach, if one of their neighbors or someone makes a claim after the fact about lack of proper notice, any decision the board has made could be voidable, and someone could challenge that in court, and claim that it was improper notice, which would set this back.
Even a party that was notified could claim that?
Well, they can say that the board had no jurisdiction because of a lack of proper notice. So that would
Okay.
set them back a substantial period of time because it would involve a lawsuit.
Okay, I'm going to ask any of board members, we're talking about the jurisdictional issue only. If you have any questions to ask of either of the applicants. Is there anyone in the audience who has any questions, just questions, about the notice provision that you've just heard about? I hear none. Is there anyone in the audience who has a statement he or she would like to make with regard to the jurisdictional issue only? I hear none and I see none. I'll close the public portion of the meeting.
I would like to just confirm before the board deliberates this issue. I'd like Mr. or Mrs. Stewart to indicate on the record, that it is their desire to proceed, understanding that they do so at their own risk.
Yes.
Confirmed.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, I've closed the public portion of the meeting. So board members, we're going to have a discussion now as to just one issue and one issue only. And that is whether or not this board is prepared to hear this matter tonight based on what you've heard from the witness and from our attorney. Meaning that there's been a proper waiver of the notice provision by the Essex County Planning Board as a consequence of that email from the Essex County planner.
So the understanding is that our attorney does not agree that it was proper waived.
She said she's not prepared to sign off on it tonight.
And because let's call it, for lack of a better term, because the procedure was not followed, really anyone could bring a suit, anybody, on those grounds.
That's correct.
All right, what is that time window? How long does somebody have?
45 days.
45 days.
And after
From the
45 days?
45 days from the date the board's resolution is published in the newspaper.
Okay,
Assuming that
Well, one
the
way or another.
application is granted.
Right, one way or another, whether assuming the application is granted, because if it's denied, it's a non-issue.
Right.
But assuming the application were to be granted, say the board were to decide tonight, then the memorializing resolution would take place at the meeting on September 16th. Then the notice appears in the newspaper, and 45 days after the date of publication is the deadline for the filing of any lawsuit challenging the board's decision.
okay, and so we could say a November timeframe, some November, December timeframe.
It would be November, December,
Okay,
when somebody, in that time frame, when somebody
okay,
could bring an appeal.
thank you.
And then it could be 6 months or more before the appeal
Right,
is
right,
decided.
right. But after that period, their time's up.
That's correct. Although I should say that
Well, that's
there
an
is this
interesting
theory.
question.
There is this theory in the law, that the 45 days runs from when they knew or should have known. So if they're not seeing it in the newspaper, and they say, well, we didn't see it in the newspaper, we didn't know about it until they started working on their driveway, so the 45 days should, we should have more time. I can't predict for you what some argument that an enterprising attorney or objector might come up with.
Anyone on the board have a comment? I have a comment, which I might as well throw out there. If our attorney is not prepared to say that this was a proper waiver on behalf of the Essex County Planning Board, I'm not prepared to vote that it is a proper, that it was a proper waiver.
What would qualify as a proper waiver?
Well, I think that's a very interesting question. The question really is, could the Essex
Can
County
we waive?
Planning Board have waived anyway,
Right.
even if they had a majority vote? But it is clear from the email that was received that, at least it's clear to me, that there was no meeting of the Essex County Planning Board and no vote of the Essex County Planning Board to waive.
Do we know who looks at these notices and makes a decision?
I don't know.
No idea.
May,
Because it's not the planning board.
We can't hear hearsay, so if you had a conversation about who does this at the county level,
understood.
The planner is not the planning board,
Right,
and that makes
that's clear.
me.
I'm going to entertain a motion, one way or the other, that we go forward on this matter and assume that the county planning board has properly waived, or a motion to the contrary.
I'll make a motion that we don't proceed.
Second.
I think we should have a roll call on this.
Mary McNatt,
I vote yes on the motion.
Frank Plattner,
Yes.
Jody Sharma,
Yes.
Joyce Siegel,
Yes.
Steve Tober,
Yes.
Wolfgang Torres,
Yes.
Joseph Sandler.
Yes.
you need to renotice Mr. and Mrs. Stewart.
And now, Eileen, do you have any idea?
I don't know, we can't announce a date anyway.
No,
No.
but
Yeah.
can you give them a date as to? when it looks like we could hear them.
And unfortunately, you're gonna have to do a complete notice
Understood.
to everybody on the list and in the newspaper.
We
again.
were just trying not to bother our
Mhm.
neighbors
I
again, but
understand that.
we'll follow process.
Mhm.
We're
You know
trying
what?
very hard.
It's safer for you. I know you don't wanna hear that, but it really is safer in the long run for you to do this. You never really know if someone's gonna come out of the woodwork after a hearing is held.
We should keep these.
Yes,
I would keep it.
October seventh.
Oh, actually, that's not as bad as I thought you were gonna say.
I wish I could squeeze them on the 16th, but it's
Yeah, that's
packed with
16th.
a lot of DVs on it.
Yeah. That's the 16th is a tough one. Okay, and because of the holidays, we only have one meeting in September, so October 7th is the date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to go back to the regular agenda, and the first matter we're hearing tonight, again, for what, the third time, is it?
Is it?
2.5.
This is only the
Only
second
the
time.
second?
The second.
Oh,
Only-
because you
only
didn't have enough
seems-
people one time, I
It only
think, right?
seems like the third time.
Right,
Just to make sure you read the
Yeah.
transcript, you read the transcript.
All
okay.
right,
We're
let's put that in the record. Say it,
Well, ask the question again?
did you read
You
the
read the
transcript
transcript of the hearing.
of the hearing that has been held?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we're good. And just, Mr. Satiri, so we're all on the same page, I think the next exhibit, if there's gonna be one, is gonna be A5, according to my notes, so Eileen, do you have that same exhibit number? Last one I have is A4, a planning board rendering of their approved rendering.
That's, my notes reflect the same thing.
That's what yours are too? Okay. So we actually heard this in May, and then we carried it into July, and then there weren't enough people. Is that what happened?
Yes, you
Okay.
originally heard this on May 20th, it was carried to July 15th,
Right,
at which time it was an issue with the voting members, and the board was kind enough to carry it again to today's date.
okay, perfect. I'm sorry I interrupted you
Quite all
entering your
right.
appearance, Mr. Satiri.
Thomas J. Satiri, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As the board knows, and I just stated, we were here on May 20th with an application on behalf of Fidelco ROI LLC for the development of a 10,500 square foot office building on Essex Street, across the street over here at 251 and 257. They're adjoining lots. We presented architectural and engineering testimony to describe the project and show you what it would look like, how it would function. The board had some questions about the design of the building and the functionality of the garage. There would be parking underneath on the ground level. We went back and discussed the board's comments. Mr. Steinberg had requested at the last appearance on July 15th that a memo be submitted to the board that would make distinctions between the original site plan and the subsequent one. I believe those memos were submitted to the members. They addressed the concerns that the board had regarding specifically the windows, the canopy on the building, some landscaping questions, and the painting. The engineering memo also addressed the issue of the garage. We believe that we have a strong project here tonight, and that will definitely be an addition to the town, as well as particularly that site. I'd like to present 3 witnesses this evening. First, I'd like to present Mr. Mark Burson, who's a member of Fidelco ROI, to describe the nature of the changes that we had made and what is actually proposed for that site. And then to present, again, Ms. Dougherty and Mr. Keller to address some of the concerns that the board had at the May 20th meeting and that are addressed in the memos that were provided to you.
Proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Burson?
I don't believe you were sworn in previously,
I was
correct?
not.
I do. Mark, MARC, middle initial E, Burson, B-E-R-S-O-N.
Thank you, Mr. Burson. Can you state your relationship to the applicant, please?
I'm one of the joint venture partners.
Thank you very much. And can you just explain to the board briefly the nature of the project and what the changes that are envisioned based on the board's comments and how we're going to address those?
I can. The project is the coming together of two property owners. The garage, old garage restaurant, prior to that industrial garage, and two-family house is to the left of the vacant lot that construction began, and the new development at the corner of Main Street and Essex Street. The developers, Red Oak Investments, as they were beginning, we've been talking for a number of years, but as they were beginning the project, kind of concluded that this was moving in the wrong direction, called and said, let's do something together. This is, instead of our having two unsuccessful projects, let's have one successful project. And we agreed. After taking into account the approved plan that this board approved, I believe it was this board.
No, it was the planning board.
Planning board, okay. Planning board approved. And looking at our buildings, land, went through a lot of different iterations. We concluded that if we were to join the buildings, enhance the parking, that we could offer in town to the downtown office space that is not currently available, contemporary and usable in a lot of different ways. Could have as many as 3 different tenants, physical tenants, or a single tenant. And kind of interesting, to the left side, the old building is set back, separating from the home, so they kind of look, the two-family house, as a separate lot, and the new building dominating from the vacant lot. And the difference is a small encroachment onto the lot of the, I keep calling it the garage because we know it as such for where the restaurant was, which enables us to hold, I think it's 19 spaces? Yeah, 19 spaces on our lot. We kind of were excited that though it may not be a grand slam financial home run, it would be a very good addition to the town and frankly to portfolio. The thing about that's interesting, there were a series of comments, and when you go back to a drawing board, there's that opportunity to do things better. You can either get your back up and angry and say, boy, what's there, or what can we do better to try and be responsive to the community and maybe have something we didn't see before. The result of that is the new plan. Frankly, if you just to put proper perspective, if you look to the drawing on the left, which is the picture on the left, which is the as-is, I don't have to tell you what we in the community have been suffering with for as long as I've driven Essex Street, which is well over 50 years. And I think that this design doesn't get rid of this transfer station, but it does hide it. And that's kind of one of the successful things to enhance the Essex Street look. It also, based on some of the parking numbers that we're seeing in office space today and in residential space in commuter towns, and you may not think of Millburn as a community, Short Hills as a commuter town, but the truth is that train population is very serious and very big. We're now down in some of the new things that are going on in downtown Newark, which was never a residential community, running at half a spot per apartment. And on offices, the building, the office space that's being built, we're seeing less than 2 cars per 1,000 as a need. And it can't be from people walking to work because the downtown didn't have the parking. You always thought of Rutgers Newark, for example, as a commuter school. I'd like to think that's changing, and it is changing, but it hasn't changed enough that that's what's driving what's going on in parking. So it's a belief that we probably can handle most, if not all, of our parking. Maybe not for a visitor, maybe not for a few stragglers, but it works. And of course, office works with residential to a great extent because the office clears out in the evening. Residential usually is overnight unless you're parking further. But in all events, we think this is bigger. And one of the things you'll see, maybe we can put up the other drawing, which is what we showed last time, so that we don't want to surprise anybody. If there were raises questions for you, let's discuss them and let's try and be responsive. Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
Okay, but if you look at that, one of the serious issues that was raised that started discussion was the window treatment. And you'll see that in this case, the windows, not only the panes are almost double the size of the panes of glass of the prior, but where we had this systematic, 3-4-3, we have 3-4-3, but they're kind of connected. They're better designed and much wider, and a little bit of use of additional brick to create divisions and lowering the canopy, which makes for a little bit friendlier, warmer streetscape is there. You'll also see that at the entrance, we've pushed back so that there's room for green at the 4th spot on the right. This particular rendering doesn't show it, but we've added on the right side of the building the originally approved round window is back, and there's been changes again to the windows on the left side of the building. I think that yeah, you can see in this rendering, by the way, the question was raised about the metal panels that were used at the garage that were of a light color, and that coloration has now been darkened to blend and to kind of get lost with the brick and not stand out. And I guess the last thing I would say, and open to questions, and of course the professionals are here to answer with more detail than I'm providing, but there's the public safety question was also raised about going in and out of the garage, and Rich Keller, our engineer, has provided us with a system of lights, and the lights will not be obtrusive but will be available to see to a driver coming out, that there's pedestrians in the area, and probably be accessible to see as you get used to, if you're someone who walks by, that you would see a light and at least to slow yourself up to be conscious that something's going on. And finally, I would just comment of one other change, and that was really a miss on the first application, and that is that this is actually, I guess, a limited office zone on first floor. And this application was amended to permit general office use on the first floor. Now, the only first floor office, to be clear, is the garage building. There is no first floor office associated or in the new structure. But that first floor office, which is visible only if you're directly in front from, and looking back, today, the idea of insurance agencies, real estate brokerage firms, and other similar uses on a regular basis are just not leasing the same way. I don't think they're going the way of the retail, but consciously we want to see action. The biggest action we're seeing in this kind of office and sizes is kind of tech. Is interesting stuff, marketing kind of things, and particularly because it has some funkiness to the space. We think that it will lease very well as office and not create any kind of aesthetic or use that would be offensive to the town. So that's in summary, and I can either answer questions or let them continue with the professionals.
Are there any questions from board members of this witness? Anyone in the audience have any questions of this witness? By the way, you will have an opportunity at the end of the presentation, before we close the public portion of the meeting, to make any comments you wish to make about this application, but not now. Next witness.
Ms. Dowry's been sworn
Yes,
previously.
that's correct.
And she's ready to answer any questions you might have on the memo or any other comments that you had from last meeting. Ms. Dowry, can you briefly explain the changes that you incorporated into your memo that was provided to the board?
Sure. So we had submitted a memo dated August 12th, and I believe Mark Person just ran through most of those changes for you. So, we described the increase in the size of the windows on the first page, and just the percentage increase in the square foot increase in the size of the windows. So the total, there's an increase on Essex Street of window area increased approximately 52%. And then on the west elevation, it increased approximately 37%, and on the east elevation, about 29%. And as was already mentioned, we included the oval window on the east elevation, the decorative oval window that was there previously, and also added some brick detailing below the windows as they were sort of grouped together to give us more visible glass on the building. In addition to that, as was already mentioned, the canopy was lowered, so previously it was at 12 feet.
Can you show that?
Yes, this canopy right here, so the black canopy on the street elevation, so there had been a comment before about the height of it, so we brought it down. It was at 12 feet, and now it's at 10 foot 5 inches above the average grade, so we brought it down, pretty significantly. And then the landscaping, again, it was described, we changed sort of the entrance piece here. So previously it had an angle facade element here, and we sort of squared that off so we could get some additional planting and a nice deep planter there right at the entrance. And with the exception of this, changing the wall from being angled to straight here, that was the only change to the floor plans that were made to it. It was really all facade sort of improvements, and we didn't change the height of the building or any of that, so all of those statistics remain the same.
Thank you, Ms. Dowry.
Questions from board members?
Well, I want to ask first, I see in the package, there's the picture of the existing site photo, and there's the picture of the new facade. Do we want to mark those?
Yes.
So you tell me we could do the existing as A5
Okay, thank you.
and A6 will be the new proposed facade?
I have a question for you on A6. What is that, what looks like green, on the facade of the building, on either side of the driveway, or the entrance to the garage?
Here?
Yes.
Right, so the intention is there's planters there, and then there's a sort of trellis system so that there can be plants. There's a little bit of a brick relief, so there's some detailing on the facade.
I'm looking at the photograph in the packet, and I'm seeing there's a difference between what you have up there as, I guess that's A6, and what was passed out.
Are you looking at the previous version?
Oh,
Yeah,
that-
you're
is
looking
that-
at the wrong one.
Is that the previous one?
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
old
Keep
one,
going one more page.
Okay.
right there.
Okay, there it is.
That's
Right.
A6.
Now I'm with you. My fault, sorry. Anyone else have any questions? Yes.
So there are windows on the north elevation, right?
There are windows on the north elevation.
And were they changed also?
They were not changed.
Okay, and why is that?
Excuse me, the patterning of the windows was changed to reflect, I just want to get the drawing up for the correct information. Right, you're talking about on the back side, right?
Yeah, the back.
Facing the DPW.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure this is what you're looking
Yep,
at, right? The
yep.
3D5 here. So we modified them just to be consistent with the rest of the windows in terms of the number of panes and sort of how
So they're
Glass.
consistent with the sides?
yes, the
Yeah.
size is consistent.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. No question.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one.
Yes.
So in this photo, you have 2 curb cuts. The previous one, you had 1 curb cut.
Correct, this curb cut was eliminated, this one.
So you're going back to the previous drawing.
I'm sorry, let me just get. And actually, this, Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, this was just a rendering issue. So in the actual site plan, if you look at the civil engineering drawings from Rich Keller's office, there was no curb cut here, this was just a rendering, sort of.
Okay.
Error.
The existing parking meter, where is that approximately in relation to the new driveway there?
I don't have that, yeah, so Rich will have to answer that.
You got that, okay.
Any other questions?
Question.
Yes.
The residential parking spaces, are those to be in the garage area as well, or those are external?
So, I mean, the spaces are just, I don't know if you want to see the spaces. I'm gonna let, the
Okay,
civil
sure.
engineer speak to that.
I have a question.
Sure.
So you have these light poles and telephone poles, the wires hanging, is that all going to be in front of the building? Or anything is changing on the front of the building? Because if you look at the existing picture, there's a pole and
You're talking about the telephone pole at the
Yeah.
street.
at the street, so
Right.
where does that fall?
Again, so they're asking questions about the telephone poles. This pole that's right here.
Well, that's more than a telephone pole.
The light
It
pole.
looks like,
It's the
it
power
looks like
line.
there's
Power
some electric.
light, yeah.
Right, it is.
Yeah, is Mr. Kelly gonna speak to that?
I can, yes.
Okay. So you want to wait and let
I'll
Mr.
wait.
Keller address that?
That's fine.
Any other questions for the architect? In the audience, are there any questions? come to the microphone, please. You do not have to be sworn to ask a question, but you must give your name and your address.
Thomas Lee, 449 Wyoming Avenue. I just had a question about the plantings when it's
Speak into the microphone.
when it's not in season. Did you say there was a brick pattern in the relief on the facade of the building?
There is a pattern, so there's a sort of border that goes around here so that when the plantings are not in season, that there's something decorative there.
That's it.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience for the architect?
How are you gonna water those plantings?
There's a hose bib that's
There is.
implanted.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The question was how are the plantings gonna be watered? There's a provision for a hose bib right inside the garage.
Any other questions for the architect?
Is it possible for the plantings to be evergreen?
Yes. We haven't had a complete discussion about the plantings.
Well, we'll ask the developer if he's prepared to commit to evergreens.
Okay, I have a couple more questions.
Let him speak first.
The answer when it comes to the plantings, I assume we would be dealing with the town forester, and we're very open to that. No, similarly, to the extent there's, he wants trees, county wants trees along the line and feels they'll be appropriate, not a safety hazard, we're game for that. The cost of the plantings are not the issue, and we want to do what's be cooperative as, so we're more than prepared to be subject to whatever is determined by a board, and they're just like.
So your answer is yes?
Yes,
Okay.
just safety concerns.
Fine, thank you. Any other questions for the architect? Yes.
Yeah, I had a couple more questions. So you mentioned about some pedestrian safety system. Could you explain? Or that would be.
That's gonna be the
Mr. Keller.
engineer.
Okay. And another question is, does this garage door open? Is it there's an automatic mechanism? Or that's also him. Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Delegate all this question.
Any other questions for the architect? Any other questions for the architect from the audience? Next witness.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question on the material?
You have to come to the microphone and say your name.
Okay, yeah. Ying Li, Y-I-N-G. Y-I-N-G is the first, L-I is the last. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
your,
just,
and your
Your
address?
address?
81 Mountain Avenue in Millburn. My question is basically the material of that, the canopy, the black canopy, about 10 feet above, average elevation, the material of the canopy.
Right. So it will be metal.
Okay, so kind of match with the mullion of the windows,
Correct.
right? Okay, all right, that's it.
Thank you. If there are no other questions for this witness, next witness.
Next witness is Mr. Richard Keller.
Mr. Keller, remind you, you're still under oath from the last hearing.
Yes,
Thank you. And I believe you appeared in this case as both a professional engineer and professional planner.
that is also correct.
Thank you.
There were several questions addressed for engineering.
I know he remembers them all.
Yes. Let me start by doing a handout of some details on what we've termed the pedestrian safety system. On both sides, give one to Ms. Davitt.
So that's going to be A7?
Correct. So. So basically, the changes to our drawings were, there should be an extra one now. Sorry.
Thank you.
The drawings to our changes were pretty minimal. One is we squared off the facade as indicated to reflect the changes to the architect's drawing, creating a planter area by getting rid of an angled area, created a niche for a larger planter. The only other substantive change besides planting change was that we do show 4 circles in the inside of the garage in the driveway, and we labeled them as being proposed stop bar sign and pedestrian sign ahead. There's also proposed pedestrian warning system provided at the entry gate. I provided the details of that system. Thank you to Ms. Frazier, who at the last hearing mentioned she had seen a similar system on vacation. And so we researched it and found that this is actually perfectly appropriate. It's designed specifically for these downtown applications where you have a driveway that exits out onto a street, and it provides for pedestrian safety in that there's 3 parts of the system. One is that there are motion sensors on either side of the inside of the garage that point out, and they pick up pedestrian activity within 20 to 25 feet of the garage opening. When a car begins to move within the garage and there's pedestrian activity, the system goes active. It's not actually seen from the street. It's actually embedded lights. If you look at the picture, there are embedded lights that face into the garage. They're not seen by the pedestrians, but they're seen by people in the garage. Those lights go off, and there's an overhead sign that says warning, pedestrians approaching. And so from anybody exiting the garage, when they go to pull out, if there's any pedestrian activity within, and you can set that range, 20, 25, 30 feet of that door, it's activated so that the driver knows to proceed with even more caution as they exit, because there are pedestrians within the zone. Yes?
So what are these sensors? Are they radar, LiDAR, camera? What is it?
I don't know whether they're lasers. They're mostly generally use some form of sonar or infrared. I imagine infrared. They would go on each side, and as I said, they would get a view coming down the sidewalk, or come outside, get a view down the sidewalk, so you can see any pedestrian activity, or it'll be alerted of any pedestrian activity. The system has had a high success rate. I spoke to the vendors about pricing and availability. It's their most marketed system and most successful system for these type of arrangements. Costs approximately $10,000 to $12,000 for installation, but it's a market safety issue. With regard to your question about the garage door, we had indicated last time, our ordinance requires us to have a door, but our intent is to have that door open generally from about 7 in the morning till 9:30 in the morning at minimum, and then again open from 3:30 until 6 o'clock in the evening, so that there's never has to be a wait for that door to open. In fact, it may be open slightly longer. We do want to have the ability to close that door after 7 p.m. for security purposes, so people can't wander into the garage, people can't be attracted to bicycles or cars, etc. But we do plan on keeping that door open, so anybody arriving in the morning doesn't have to slow and wait for it. We imagine that there'll be a key fob that any of the either the 2 residents or the whoever gets the 19 spots inside will have a key fob to activate that, get into it, so they can open it up from a distance if it's not already open. But if we left it open during the rush hours, that would avoid any queuing out waiting for that garage door to open, so cars could freely pull in and out during the rush hour periods and during the school periods. This is not an area of the street. We've studied some of the pedestrian traffic. This is not an area that gets a high volume of kids from the school. They generally tend to go up further and cross. But we do expect, hopefully, with the continued development that's coming down, hopefully with the development of the Wells Fargo, we do expect to see more pedestrians certainly on the close side of the street, because that's where all the design is pushing. But we felt this was a safe condition. I would point out, this is, we have situations throughout the downtown where we have a building that's set at the setback, brick building with a driveway that comes out. Happens at the Millburn Hardware, happens at a number of spaces. This is not an unusual condition in the downtown. What makes this different is that since we are away from the corner, there's a little more visibility. We can control that, and with the ability to control the opening of the door and the pedestrian light safety system, we feel it'll be by far the safest condition within the downtown where these types of conditions do exist. They're not unique to Millburn. They happen in South Orange, they happen in Summit, they happen in other downtowns, as is evidenced by the success of the system.
I'm gonna interrupt you here, and let's divide up your testimony. I'll ask if there are questions from the board members with respect to the testimony that you've heard up till now with respect to the pedestrian safety issue. Yes, Mary?
Okay, I have a question about how are you going to keep people out who might just drive in?
Well, you know, it's always an issue if somebody decides to drive in. We do get people who park in lots they're not supposed to. That's gonna have to be governed and policed by the owners. We have similar situations, a couple doors up, behind the bookstore, there's parking, and people sneak in there, and the owner's gonna keep an eye on it. Unfortunately, that'll be the situation.
Thank you.
Any plans to supplement the sensors, you know, bulbs burn out? I mean, there could be periods of time where it needs maintenance. I don't know how long it takes to call somebody to come. Mirrors perhaps, or some other way to supplement that?
We looked at mirrors, they're not as attractive, and we found that the redundancy of having 4 or 5 lights, even if one goes out, you've still got plenty of lights activating, you've got the overhead sign that still activates. I also talked to them about whether they ever did any audio chirping to the doors opening. They said they've gotten away from that. They found that they were not necessarily successful. They provided no more safety, but they added a lot of noise to the street. And so they indicated that their business model had left any audible tones years ago. They found that this was their safety system.
So if there's a power outage during the day, then the system won't work.
I can certainly see if there's battery packs available for this, or I don't know if the building will have a generator. But certainly, obviously, when you have power outages, street lights go out, police are at the intersections. Those are pretty rare times when we've extended power outages in our downtown. They happen more in our residential neighborhoods, not so often in our downtown. So I think that we'll certainly investigate whether battery system is available for this. And as I said, I'm not sure if the owner's planning on a generator, but certainly that would be attached to it.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions about this, your testimony up till now. The first is, and it just so happens that on the way to this building tonight, I saw 3 young boys, maybe 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, on bicycles on that sidewalk. How does this system work with respect to bikes?
Well, certainly, if any time during when a car is exiting, anytime any pedestrian activity is
I'm not talking about pedestrians,
well, pedestrian,
talking about
bicycle
bikes.
activity, I've seen bicycles quicker, but even if you're coming out, if a bicycle moves into that range of the motion detectors, those lights will start to fire off, and the overhead, which is right at the entrance, at the exit threshold, will go off. So, look, you can't handle every situation, a fast-moving bicycle, but obviously, again, no different and certainly much safer than exists at the children's bookstore or any of the other driveways that merge between buildings in the downtown.
The other question, and I don't know whether you've actually reached this in your testimony yet, you have 2 parking spaces to the east of that building. And my question is, if cars are parked in those parking spaces, what kind of visibility does somebody exiting this driveway have of oncoming traffic? I'm talking about vehicular traffic coming down the street from the corner.
We have spoken to the engineering department at length, both about on-street parking as well as the viability for landscaping in the area. There is obviously the depressed curb that is to the east of us, which was never filled in. That goes into an outdoor dining area that's part of the common law restaurant. That depressed curb is still there, but it doesn't mean that cars can't be parked in front of it. When I spoke to engineering, they indicated that it's their intent, based upon any approvals that this board might grant, that they will restudy this between the depressed curb, and they verified that they can actually put a metered space in front of a depressed curb. By law, they can still have a depressed curb. It doesn't have to be replaced by the town or this applicant on an adjoining property. So the engineer indicated, her assistant engineer, who is a traffic expert, it's their intent, based upon the approval, that they'll restudy the location of parking spots, specifically to see what they can now fit in with the removal of three existing depressed curbs and being replaced with one. So that would be, engineering will make that safety determination as to where the new parking will go. It will be something different than we see here today. And they'll also make the determination about where, if any, we can get street trees in along the streetscape. Again, being careful of driveways on both directions within that area. And they indicated in my conversation again today with the engineering department, they indicated that they would be perfectly comfortable if the board were to approve this, to make that a condition of any approval, that we will work with them to assure that any landscaping that can be put in and that our site triangles are viable given whatever plans they make in the street.
So the current metered spot that's slightly east of your driveway will potentially be moved or removed?
Most likely it'll be shifted further to the east.
Is there any provisions for safety, for the people, the pedestrians and the bicyclists? Like, will they know when a car's coming out?
As
Is there any
indicated,
system?
there's no audible chirping. If the door is moving, obviously you can see that. If there's, we could certainly add something that was audible, so that if a car is pulling out, you can also have a motion detector that points to the inside, and you can have a chirping noise to let you know cars are coming. As indicated, Lifeguard Group, who specializes in this, have found that they have not been beneficial necessarily, that the onus is really on the driver to be careful when pulling out in any of these, and their goal is to warn accordingly. But we could certainly look at doing an audible chirp, so that if a car gets with, just another motion detector in, the car is within 10 feet of the entrance, that an audible chirp on the outside would let it get.
The audible, I'm concerned with the children in the middle school, and they come down and they do rush around the corner. And they usually have, phone, they're not gonna even hear anything. I was wondering if there was any kind of like, bollards or some bollards that light up and flash, and they never pay attention. They're socializing or listening to music, and
I don't know if we could do a bollard, but I think the architect could probably find, an appropriate place on either side to put two attractive sconces or that would light or perhaps flash based upon motion sensors.
yeah, because I just think of when people come past that intersection, they're going to turn into the garage. I'm almost more concerned about that because they want to get in to get to work, and they're more of, they want to get off of Essex. There's cars going behind them, and if there's cars parked and kids, they're not going to see them when they're making their right turn.
We have conditions like this all over the town, so our goal
And they're
is to make
dangerous.
this as safe as possible.
They're dangerous. No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Prove it, and
But
that's
they
why I
don't,
think we're
yeah.
doing it.
So both pedestrians and cyclists, they're called vulnerable road users. And if you look at the goal of majority of the cities across the country, it is to ensure zero accidents,
Correct.
especially for pedestrians, cyclists. And I think with this system, it's not the state-of-the-art system, and it does not prevent those accidents for the vulnerable road users, and especially in our downtown, where kids are walking from middle school, other people are walking, and you expect a lot of pedestrian traffic. Just by having two sensors detecting motion, you're not ensuring pedestrian safety with this system. And there are state-of-the-art systems available currently in our country where they can detect this and send these messages to the cell phone for the pedestrians. Everybody has a cell phone in their hand. What happens at nighttime? Let's say during night when your sensor is not able to detect the pedestrians or in a bad weather condition, how do you ensure that the sensor is going to detect all those pedestrians?
They're not light-based, they're motion-based. So whether it's dark or not, they'll pick up infrared, will pick up whether there's a movement at night or daytime. So it's not light sensitive.
In bad weather conditions, all sensors may not be able to.
Motion is picked up. I've done some research. I don't know what state-of-the-art system you're talking about, and I don't know of a system that would broadcast alerts to all cell phones.
There are
Or that we run.
rules.
I don't know how that works. I'd be more than happy to research it.
Sure, yeah. If you look at some of the roadside units, they're called roadside units. They are infrastructure that transmits cellular signals. So it could be DSRC based, or it could be cellular signals that are transmitted to the phones of the users. So to Joy's point, they can alert the pedestrians as well as the cars. And with the new cars, you can get that indication in the car, so that the car owner is not looking on the road to see the lights flashing, but they'll get a message on their screen. So I think this is a very outdated system for us to ensure zero accidents for pedestrian safety. And I think that's key for us to ensure that there are zero accidents in the downtown.
I'm unfamiliar with the viability or the expense of that system. I can't offer that on behalf of my client. I can say that, I don't know if a child riding a bicycle is gonna be checking his cell phone. It sounds interesting, but I'm not sure that it's, I think the system we've proposed, certainly does provide the safest conditions with the goal of providing no accidents. It does require some intelligence and some diligence on the part of any user, whether they're on a cell phone, or they're walking, or they're looking at lights or flashing, etc. I don't know how they broadcast when you get poor signals. I don't know how any of that stuff works, so I can't commit to that. I can certainly say, if this board were to approve this project, because I think on its merits, its benefits far outweigh any detriments, including any safety issues, to the community, but we'd be more than happy to look into those systems. I just don't know how they work.
Could you please just remind us, what are the locations to the west of this site? What's on the other, on the west side? What are those buildings?
There are, there's a salon, I believe, immediately to, well, there's a two-family house, and there's a salon on the first floor,
Okay.
Alternative medical use on the second floor. As you continue up, there is the children's bookstore. Continuing past that, there is the restaurant, which is now Cafe Capri, I think it is, or Capri Restaurant. Continuing past that, there's get to Dr. Grape's dental office. Actually, before you get that, before you make the curve, you get to the Bruce Hill Agency, and then you get to the DPW, and past the DPW is when you get to some of those other uses.
Okay, so there's every reason to believe that pedestrian traffic shouldn't be increasing as this area continues to develop, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
I think I may have an exhibit that you show.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so here you've got, here's the property in question, two-family house. Next door to that is the salon with the alternative medical practice on the second floor, I believe. This is the former house, which is now the children's bookstore. And then we come into, I don't know which use this, I think both of these combined, or maybe just the left use is the, what used to be Danico and now is Capri Restaurant. Then you come to the Bruce Hill Insurance Agency, and then you get to the DPW building, which slides behind the whole project into a public lot. And then there's the Dr. Grape's orthodontist or dental office,
Right,
and then the police and fire.
And so, can you just address Joy's question again? Cars coming down Essex, it wants to make the right turn in to the garage. What warning is there for pedestrians in that event?
There is no warning. There's just visibility. Obviously, every morning when I go to live bread, I turn into that parking lot. I make sure that there are no pedestrians that are either coming out of the deck or coming towards the other way or crossing at that point, crossing to get into the Fidelity building. So, you know, unfortunately, we can't prevent every type of conflict, but certainly with the moving of this parking space, we anticipate further to the east. That's going to allow visibility at this intersection.
Right.
When you're coming down, it's up
So
to the driver below.
you can't have a situation where you have like a UPS truck parked right there that's gonna block a driver's vision of what's going on the sidewalk, right?
I don't pretend to say what a UPS driver will or won't do, because they're the most uncontrollable lot in the world. But certainly, I think this is no different than in the downtown. We'll have actually better visibility than most because we're not right at the junction between two buildings right on the property line. So I think as this space, we believe, will move further to the east, to go where the curb was. I think you'll have adequate visibility as you're coming down. First of all, you'll also be able to see as you're coming down whether there's anybody walking. Certainly, anybody who's coming by bicycle or pedestrians coming to the east, they'll have adequate visibility to stop and let them out.
Also, this is a one-way street. Is there a sign indicating that when somebody's driving out? Is there any sign?
No, no left turn.
I don't recall if we had one inside. I believe proposed no left turn with proceed caution signs inside the building. So there's a sign inside that says no left turn. And then a non-backlit proceed with caution. And then there's the overhead one that will light up when lifted.
So now let's assume they do put 3 parking spots out front. Unlike Bunchers and the bookstore you mentioned, they don't have to wait for a garage door to pull into those lots.
Right.
So now if you have someone parked curbside, now someone's sitting in an active lane of traffic waiting for the garage door to go up. Has there been any concern expressed by traffic or otherwise that you're basically going to put a queue into active traffic waiting for this door to go up?
As indicated, we believe, and my preliminary discussions are, by closing off this press curve and the fact that that one does not need to eliminate a parking spot, this parking spot is going to move further to the east, which will free up visibility. So if the driver comes down, they'll be able to actually, when this space moves some 20 feet to the east, there will be space for a driver to actually get out of the travel lane and wait if there's someone crossing. I would point out that this has been reviewed at least once, if not twice, by police, and it was reviewed under the planning board application by police, and they had no comment.
How does the door go up? Like, if I'm driving up to it, and I'm a tenant of the building, how do I open the door?
If you're coming at a non-rush hour, coming in the middle of the night.
It's like not 10 o'clock in the morning.
My suspicion is that people who have the ability to park, they will have a key fob, and will open it up with a key fob.
Oh, you mean like garage door
Yeah,
opener type
garage door.
thing?
Yeah, so whether you program it into one of your 3 overheads in your car, or you have a individual key fob or a garage door opener in your car, as you're coming down, if it's late at night, or if it's 4 or 7 in the morning, 6 in the morning, and it's closed, you would have the ability to open it.
And I remember asking this to you before in the first hearing, but this door's not going to be one of those high-speed doors when it goes up, correct?
Those doors generally tend to be lighter in structure. Often, when you see them in the car dealers, they vacuum really quickly. They tend to be thin plastic, whether they're hard sheets or they're translucent sheets. And I believe that the weight of this would preclude any of those lightning fast. They still make them pretty quick, but they're not going to be as fast as those you see that are vacuum operated at the
Any thought given to putting some kind of, I'll use the term lamppost, but that's not what I really mean, but some kind of post roadside, outside the garage that could provide notification of cars approaching, or pedestrians, or light flashing, anything along those lines?
So you're saying something out in the road, something?
Yeah,
Here?
at the corner, at the curbside, yeah,
You mean on the sidewalk?
on the sidewalk.
I don't know, since it's the county right away. I mean, it took me 3 weeks to get an answer from the county that they didn't want any trees in their county right away. And then I talked to the business administrator, who said technically under the agreements for complete streets, the town had already reached an agreement that they could put trees where they wanted to. So I don't know with regard to putting a pole with a light. We could certainly investigate that, and I'd be certainly happy to look into that. Obviously, we want it to be attractive and not garish,
Yeah.
but also we want safety.
Yeah, as close to zero as you can get, right?
It would just be nice to have some, I mean, along the lines of what you're saying, just to have some sort of notification to the public that they need to be alert, remind them to be alert when they're approaching that doorway, because, people, tend to maybe space off.
And I think if you've got the internal system, which is telling the internal drivers, and you've got lights on the outside that start flashing, I think that's certainly would be
Adequate to let passengers know or pedestrians know that something's happening at the door. They're not just
Except for when somebody's turning in, so far, that doesn't seem to be covered at all.
right. Well, again, anybody pulling into any driveway, you need to watch what's happening, and
So the alleyway, obviously the curb cut disappeared from the first to the second. There were obviously bollards there when it was operating as the garage. Okay.
I believe that's
Will-
true, yeah.
Will they go back? Because now it looks like an open
Well,
passageway.
it'll be too narrow, and there's a curb there, so, yeah, there will be no one will be allowed to park there.
Right.
And right now,
because the garage has been closed and we've had a construction site next door, the two residents next door have been sneaking in cars, there's two cars parked in the front.
Yeah, per your picture.
Yeah, so they've been sneaking in there even though they're not supposed to be.
but, you know, when no one was watching, they snuck in there. But clearly, we could put a single bollard in the center, which could be consistent with the downtown vernacular that we have over at the alley that runs from Essex into Millburn Avenue. Same sort of vernacular that's at the Clock Plaza. We could certainly put a single bollard in the center there.
But the depressed curb is gonna be gone anyway.
The depressed curb will be
So they're
gone.
gonna have to hop curb to get
Yeah.
back in there.
I think it's somewhat redundant, and
Yeah.
the space is, it's 15 feet wide at the street, but it gets down to about 10 or 12 feet at the back. So I think it'll be discouraged through the curbing, but certainly if the board felt it would be better, we could provide a bollard, a single bollard that would prohibit anybody from getting in it.
And does the current parking, 19 spaces, include 2 residential spots as well? Or?
It's not been determined. The anticipation is that the tenants will get 2 of those spots, but it's unclear yet. Clearly, the applicant has indicated they're willing to buy permits for the deficiency. So, whether they're 24-hour residents or their business permits, I think is to be determined. Certainly, we're aware of the fact that most time, the one thing nice about office buildings is they don't have an overlapping time on the weekends like retail and residential does. So for the most part, in my office building, my 2-family house next door, they know that they have to be out by 7:30, and after 5:30, they can take all 19 of my spots if they want. But they're restricted during those times, and it works fine because it's office and residential, not retail and residential.
Any other questions for this witness? Yes.
Another question about, how's this building in size as compared to common lot? And in
Well-
terms of height and,
It's the same height, because we're requesting the same height variance due to the difficulties created by the floodplain. So we're requesting the same height variance that was approved for common lot, which is the exact same height which was approved for Cafe Saigon across the street. You know, whenever you've got and as I explained at the last hearing, unfortunately, the DEP floodplain is what we have to deal with. According to their statistics, this area is under 7 feet of water during a hurricane. We've all been around during Floyd and Irene and Sandy and know that this site didn't flood at all during those periods, but we have to abide by DEP regulations, which says with the
Water being 7 feet high, we can't have any habitable area on the first floor. That's why the lobby is actually considered non-habitable. There'll not be a person, there's just a door and an elevator or stair. The back section of the garage is grandfathered because it's an existing building, so we don't need to remove the habitable area.
But because of the DEP restrictions, the first floor becomes garage, and then because
it slopes up slightly, we're actually carving into that somewhat, but we needed that certain height, which meant the first floor comes in, and it really necessitates that height deviation that goes from 28 feet up to 30 and a half feet roughly, which is a C variance, it's less than 10%. But it's roughly, it's actually the same exact height as the common lot building, and it's the height that we have been routinely granted. The first application years ago, when the Driscolls came in with an office, with a retail, where they had stairs and display windows and parking behind, that had the exact same height variance. I think every application that's always come in exactly the same height, consistent with, as I said, the new Cafe Saigon and the existing
Common lot building. It's what we need to get over. And I would point out, although it wasn't passed, the town is looking at reconsidering what heights will be allowable in the downtown. They're considering going up some distance. We don't know what it is. It was proposed originally to 40 feet. We don't know what it's going to be. It may be something different, but certainly I think we presented the proofs last time, how this meets both the positive and negative criteria in support of the C variance to justify this variance, given the hardship created by being in the floodplain, whether it's artificial or not.
Any other board members have questions for this witness?
I don't know if it's for you or for the architect. Doesn't the garage have to be vented?
Say it again?
Does the garage have to be vented? Where are the vents?
So the engineering of the actual system for the garage will be done sort of during the construction documents. So there are flood vents that have to be incorporated as part of the flood regulations,
Right.
and then there's also ventilation.
So will they be on either,
They'll either go up through the building or they'll be through the back of the building.
not on the facades?
Well, they won't be certainly on the front facade, you won't see them there.
Or what about the sides?
No, I think it will be in the back of the building, ventilation will be in the back. There is space at the back, between the back of the building and the property line.
Yeah, we made a conscious decision. If you've been to Hoboken and seen some of the buildings there where they have they have decorated cast iron grills, but they look like
Right.
windows, but they're all ventilation, so you can naturally ventilate, not mechanically ventilate. We decided it would be more attractive if we mechanically vented, rather than trying to put some faux windows on the side or front of the building.
Mechanicals are all on the roof?
Yeah.
Any other questions for this witness from board members? Anyone in the audience have any questions for the engineer, planner? Next witness.
I'd just like to ask Mr. Keller to go over the positive and negative criteria for the D
Good
variance
idea.
for office use on the first floor.
Yeah, as I said, we already presented the proofs for the D variance for the use of having two uses on the site, as well as the couple of C variances. But last time, we indicated that we would find an office user on the first floor that was consistent with those uses permitted in the zoning ordinance. And that was because we had goofed and missed it. And so we agreed we would agree to come in with that, and then probably come back at some point later to change that, because we felt it was appropriate that it be something different. Because we got bounced, we had the opportunity to renotice and modify our application, and now we're requesting a D variance to allow for what is been referred to as the garage restaurant building, to allow that to be a general office use, not medical, but a general office use in a zone that does not permit that. So we're seeking that flexibility. That does two things. One is we think that it is not a great retail space, nor, if you look at the permitted uses, in addition to retail, sales and services, financial institutions, offices, but not on the street level. For the purposes of that restriction, travel agencies, opticians, newspaper offices, real estate offices are not considered as offices, and they are permitted to locate on the street level. Obviously, those are outdated uses. We don't see them anymore. And this is really, we understand the purpose of that ordinance is to reinforce the pedestrian nature of the central business district. However, given the unique configuration of the existing proposed buildings, we think that this variance can be approved without compromising the intent and purpose of the master plan, especially given the most recent recommendations in the 2018 reexamination. With regard to the flexibility as indicated by one of the members of the applicant, it does give flexibility for some unique office uses, such as tech spaces that like kind of funky things. They can be out of the way. It can be something where someone finds it. Or it also allows the flexibility that if they get a front tenant on the second floor versus a back tenant on the first floor, they can use that as a lobby entrance that then serves as a lobby or a directional space up to the second floor. So it does allow what would may likely happen, and is that space will be rented by one of the upstairs tenants as an ancillary space and a lobby into the upper area above. With regard to the special reasons, we think that the purposes of this change, I think, are consistent with the overall project, in that we're advancing general welfare, that we think that the overall project is consistent with the character of the downtown. We're not replacing a front street retail space with an office space. We're taking a garage restaurant, which was kind of quirky. It was actually a repair garage that we tried to keep consistent with the downtown when it got its original approval by taking bricks from the Rimback building and using those bricks, so we keep some of that vernacular and some of that material in the downtown. But it's always been, it's always looked like the garage that sits at the back of many of these commercial spaces within our downtown. The architect has done a great job incorporating that into the vernacular of the main building, keeping that garage door because it's kind of open and funky, and we actually, there's been an overwhelmingly positive response to the garage doors at the Hills restaurant, which will be soon expanding to 2 more garage doors as they switch names and restaurants. So we felt it was important, but it is compromised retail space. We're having enough trouble filling our downtown primary retail spaces to put a retail space at the back of this alleyway 87 feet from the street, we think is really counterproductive to the purposes of our municipal master plan. We think that in addition, 4055 D2G, we're providing for an appropriate location for commercial use to meet the needs of the community. This provides a prime-time office space in the downtown, very likely to supplement the Class A space above, and it goes in where retail and restaurants have not flourished either on this site or in this area. It also promotes a desirable visual environment. We're eliminating that 1,447 square foot vacant space at the back of the property, which is, in terms of its location on the property as a principal building, is really not in keeping with our downtown. Most importantly, this provides another opportunity to screen the Essex view of the DPW. So by keeping that there, the main building screens the view of the switching station, the JCP&L switching station, and this actually blocks the view of the Salt Dome and the construction vehicles that are stored right behind it on the DPW. We also think that it certainly advances general welfare because the site is particularly suited for the proposed use. And that, I think, is evidenced by the fact that the site is particularly not suited for the permitted uses. Again, 87 feet back from the street, down an alleyway that is as narrow as 12 feet wide. The prior permitted restaurant failed, we think, partially because of that lack of street visibility. I would also point out many other towns around us, such as Summit, they do prohibit street fronting offices on the street level at the streetscape. So in other towns, they prohibit offices from being on the street, but when they're either in the back or they don't have any access to the street, they are permitted, and that's, as I said, that's common in places such as Summit. We think that there's certainly, with regard to the negative criteria, there's no substantial detriment to allowing that to be used as general office, and there's no detriment to the character of the neighborhood. It will not be perceived from the street, and it will not replace an existing storefront along the street frontage. And as I said, it eliminates another vacancy in the downtown. With regard to the master plan and reconciling any omission in the master plan, I would point out the new master plan reexamination. The primary goals and objective. Goal number 1 is to encourage the appropriate uses of land that promote the character of the township as a small suburb of the highest quality. We think that this does not cut against that goal. And the objective 1.01 is to promote the appropriate mix of development in downtown and other commercial areas, recognizing that those uses are changing as downtowns change. Our master plan recommendations under the B4 zone on page 54 recommends that we consider permitting, or the town consider permitting office uses, including shared office uses on the ground floor, provided that the same requirements for transparency and active storefronts are met. I think that last section really doesn't apply here because we're not along the street frontage. So I think by being back 87 feet, it really eliminates that requirement, and I think we're following the master plan imperative of being a little more creative and allowing some office spaces in the first floor. We think that it is certainly not inconsistent with the master plan. I would point out that this project was approved by the planning board with many of the same design parameters, which could be built as of right. We think it's a better project by roping in the garage restaurant building. We think that we heard the changes that this board recommended, both aesthetically and with regards to safety at the last hearing. We think we've addressed those. Planning is always a balance between the benefits, ensuring the benefits of a project outweigh any detriments. We think that clearly we have an opportunity to infill this site with an attractive Class A office building that will be a great help to the viability of our downtown. We think that it's a rare opportunity to get a long-time derelict property to be developed with a high-quality, attractive building to energize this area. We think it's also, as indicated, an opportunity to completely screen the power substation and the DPW. We think it's an exciting opportunity for the merchants. We've only received positive input, that's hearsay, from other downtown merchants who are already talking, that I've spoken to, are talking about repainting their buildings across the street, getting new tenants in because they're excited by the energy that this is going to create and the opportunity to get rid of that, that dominant view, which is, of the substation and into the DPW in the back. I think that this site certainly can meet the positive and negative criteria in support of the D1 variance required for the use on the first floor.
Mr. Keller, could I just want to ask you to refresh my recollection about the parking?
Mhm.
Because I think you're providing 19 on-site parking spaces,
That's correct.
and I believe the requirement was 50 spaces. My notes are indicating something about purchasing 31 permits.
That's what the applicant indicated last time. The deficiency was 31. Under the section of the ordinance, if you purchase parking permits for each of those, you actually do not need a parking variance.
Okay.
So to eliminate that parking variance, the applicant indicated last time that they would purchase 31 parking permits in some variety, way, shape, or form.
Okay.
I have one question, is that all right? Regarding signage, is that the way it's gonna stay?
I would refer to the architect. Right now, the intent was not to have any tenants on there, but just a building street indicator of 251 Essex, and if you look down the alley, you'll see the 257. I think that's our only intent at this time. Quick question, is there any way, who's responsible for enforcing the purchase of the 31 permits?
It would be done, we would include that as a condition of approval.
Okay, but who's gonna make sure they do that? Who's gonna make sure they purchase 31?
Well, just as it typically is done when we include a requirement that permits be purchased.
They won't get,
A CO, they won't get a CO.
When the project is complete, they'll come back to me and then I just go through all the conditions and check with the tax collector and make sure they've been purchased.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I had a previous question about that light pole and the telephone, the wiring, where does that?
That's shown on our plan. The existing home is between the garage door entrance and the front entrance, slightly biased towards the front entrance. If you look at the, it would basically be, you go to the, basically be in about this location right here. And that's an existing pole, which we're, it's been a source of contention between the administration in this town and the power company as to trying to move and relocate those, as part of the complete streets. And these were determined to be something like $500,000 to move or reduce those poles. So the town has not made any moves to do that. They feel that there may be at some point an opportunity when, if you'll notice, there are some redundant poles on Millburn Avenue which have been put in but they're not in use. And when JCP&L gets around to doing that, they may be able to then reconsider some of the poles that come up Essex Street. So, but right now, that's out of our control. That's controlled by JCP&L and the county.
And the wiring, that's how high is that, the wires that are hanging? Do you know?
Yeah, unfortunately, our downtown is plagued with wires that cut across, and I'm not going to say, having been here for 25 years myself, my business for more than 30, you tend to start to look through those, but clearly you can see that the wires come across the front of the common lot building, and they'll come across this building too. I often say, where do we hang the snowflakes for the snowflake parade if we got rid of our wires? But it's unfortunate. Because we're in a downtown location and we're in a floodplain, it's very expensive to put utilities underground. And the decision was made many years ago to not pursue that. And now it's really just cost prohibitive in a downtown flooding area to actually bury all those utilities. So
It doesn't block the garage door?
no, not at all.
It's
No,
higher than?
No, it's well out of the way. We clearly
Wanted to make sure that would not conflict. Here's the show. Here's the door, and there's the garage door, there's the front door, and the pole sits just to the east of center between those two.
No, I meant the wires are not that low.
Oh, no, the wires are not that low. They're certainly more than 18 feet above grade, so they're going to be, you'll see them when you look out the second floor, but
They won't inhibit the use of the building or the use of the garage entry and so on. They only, I think minimum, that garage is probably door, Nancy, what's the height on that garage door, roughly? Yeah, it's about 9 feet, but it's well over the DOT requirement is that they have to be at least either 12 or 14 feet high, and they're well above that.
Is that garage designed to have cars going in and out simultaneously?
Yes, it's wide enough to do that, yeah.
Any other questions from the audience for this witness? I see none. Anything else, counsel?
No, Mr. Chairman, that's all.
You want to sum up?
Basically, I just want to reiterate what Mr. Keller said regarding the positive and negative criteria for the variances. I think we do satisfy both positive and negative criteria. The intent and purpose of the zone plan is clearly satisfied by this project. It's a marked addition and improvement to the streetscape and to the town in general. We've addressed your concerns from the May 20th meeting regarding the facade and safety for the garage. I think the project is going to be a positive development for the town, and strongly encourage that the board give it its approval for the variance relief sought and the site plan.
Are there any statements that anyone in the audience would like to make with respect to this application? I see none. I hear none. I'll close the public portion of the meeting. Counsel, what are our variances that we need to consider here?
Well, we have a waiver of environmental impact statement, we have preliminary and final site plan. We have 2D variances. The first D is to permit 2 principal uses, because this is a merger of the property, so it will be 2 principal uses on the lot. And the second D variance would be to permit general office use on the first floor, which relates to that garage restaurant building in the back. There is a building height requirement, but it is a C variance because it is only 2.67 feet over the permitted height. And there is a loading space variance. And the typical parking variance, because 50 spaces are required and 19 are provided, would be eliminated if you condition approval on the applicant annually purchasing 31 permits. Did I miss anything, Mr. Satiri?
That is it.
And I think that maybe, well, first of all, are there any comments from board members on any of these variances? Mary?
I would just like to make a general comment that I think that the applicant has done a very nice job with scaling the building in a different way and making it more of a human scale. Adding reducing that piece 2 feet made a big difference, the windows made a big difference, and the planters make a big difference. I'd like to see some way where the greenery can be continued evergreen. I don't know how you do that, but you can do that with the forester.
Letting them work with the forester to come up with that?
Right.
Mhm.
I would like, well, my comment would be on that issue, that I think we should mandate evergreen plantings, not leave it up to the forester.
No, I'm saying work with the forester as to the.
The species and
The
the nature of
species, that's fine.
evergreens.
Height and because we don't know how we do that.
Any other comments from board members?
I have a comment. I think I'm concerned about the safety, so especially of the pedestrian and the bicyclist, and if there's anything that can be done to make it a better, secure system for the pedestrian, I would like to see that happening, because as a town, we wanna make sure that our pedestrians are 100% safe, especially because there are a lot of kids from middle school. My own son goes with his friends, and I know they're not going to look. They're just going to run towards the bookstore. Nobody's going to pay attention to those lights. So I would suggest that if you can look at some more robust systems that can be installed in that area.
Any other comments? Mary?
I think that we've heard testimony about the system, and I don't know that we can say, go back and look at a new system.
I don't know how we,
No,
Ensure that.
I don't know how we require that.
I don't either.
Well, there was a conversation about additional lights on the outside.
Right?
So we could
They
make that
agreed
a
to put some
condition.
kind of flasher on the outside of the building. So you could condition that, you know, the inclusion of some sort of exterior flasher.
Or even the sound system, there was some sound to indicate that there's
Audible
a
chirping.
audible chirping.
So you could do that. But to make them investigate some new system, I mean, you know, frankly, the board has not retained a traffic expert. We have not heard any testimony that this is unsafe. The police department has looked at this twice on behalf of the Board of Adjustment, and again, when this was approved by the planning board. So nobody on this board is a traffic expert. All of the testimony to the present time indicates that the police department has no objection. At the hearing in May, we expressed a concern because of, you know, there would be vehicles and pedestrians, and, you know, this is gonna be a new building, and we thought it was the opportunity for them to make that as safe as possible. And you've heard testimony tonight about what they're proposing. So other than the imposition of those exterior elements to the system in terms of an audible chirping and exterior lighting, I'm not sure what more you could appropriately request and have it be found reasonable by a court.
So I'm not in favor of the chirping. I think it just generates a lot of noise that could be continuous for like 30 minutes.
Every
at a
time
time.
anybody goes by, it's gonna chirp.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm a proponent of that.
And to the testimony, apparently that's not terribly additive to safety.
And with people listening to music as they walk and ride, it doesn't seem to be.
I think external lighting is important.
Lighting, I think, catches your eye, can't miss it.
So I think that should be a condition.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to know what that is, because I would hate to see some kind of a red light that flashes on the outside. I'd like to know what you're.
Well, the pedestrian would see it.
Excuse me?
It's for the pedestrian.
Right, Mary wants to know what it's
I
gonna look
wanna
like.
know what it looks like. I think we have a very nicely designed building, and if you go putting this here and that there, and something else there, and hang something here, and chirp something there.
I think that my view is that safety is paramount. And external flashing lights when cars are about to exit the building, I think are very important.
I don't know how external flashing lights are going.
You could mount those lights on either side of the garage door.
But how are these kids, we're talking about kids from middle school, they're gonna be looking up there at these lights that are flashing?
Catch your eye.
I mean, I'd like to hear testimony that if that is going to really be adequate.
Okay, I mean, I think that we'll see how the voting goes on that. And what, is there somebody, I think what we should do is vote on the D variances separately.
Yeah,
Do you agree with that?
absolutely.
So we have two D variances. One D variance, and remember, board members, the D variances require 5 affirmative votes. We have a full board of 7 members here tonight. So the two D variances are 2 uses on the same lot.
And general office on the first floor.
And general office on the first floor relating to the rear in what was the garage restaurant. So does someone want to make a motion with respect to those two D variances, and then we'll talk about conditions.
You can do them at the same time, or one D variance at a time?
I think you can do them at the same time if.
I think you can do them.
I move approval of both D variances.
I
Is
second.
it a second?
Second.
So I
Ms.
second.
Wolfgang, you're the second.
Mary McKnight?
Yes.
Craig Plattner?
Yes.
Joe DeShano?
No.
Joyce Segal?
Yes.
Steve Toger?
Yes.
Wolfgang Torres?
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg?
Yes. And now we're going to talk about the C variances, and which of those
Well,
now?
we're gonna talk, or we're gonna
And
talk
we're
just
ta-
about
and
the
the
C
conditions.
variances
And the conditions.
and the conditions. But remember, we're going to, we have preliminary and final site plan approval
Right.
as well. And a merger. Well, the merger is really insignificant. That's really not, doesn't require you to take action. It's going to be merged. Building height, loading, and the parking condition to eliminate the parking variance.
Well, that's not a variance.
Well, it's not a variance, provided you require them to purchase 31 permits,
Right.
so,
So let's talk about the conditions.
okay.
Well, the first one is requiring 31 permits to be, parking permits to be purchased
Annually.
annually as a condition of approval.
Mm-hmm.
Forever.
So do we vote on these separately?
No, we're
No,
gonna
I
make a
think
list.
We can make a list.
Well, we'll make a list and then people can discuss whether there's any of them that you're opposed to.
The second one that I recall is that the plantings on the exterior of the building should be evergreen with a variety to be discussed with the township forester.
But that doesn't exclude the planters that are gonna have seasonal flowers. When you say the planters have to be, the plants have to be evergreen, you're excluding the planters that have seasonal flowers.
I'm
Well, you
not-
could still put seasonal flowers in there, but you want, I think a number of the board members are looking for there to be evergreens in those planters as well. So my suspicion is that we should say that the applicant would meet with the forester to, arrive at a species of evergreens,
Well, I guess the other thrust is that they should be planted all year round.
Right, regardless of what's there.
Right,
there should be
so no
some-
matter what it is, whatever is seasonal or not, they must be planted all year round.
well,
They
you
can't
want
be empty.
year-round plantings,
Right.
including evergreens, that are the species to be discussed with the forester.
I thought it was mentioned by the architect that there would be a trellis system.
Well, there is
That's what it
And-
is, yeah.
trellis system, and then the brickwork, I think she said the brickwork has a design in it as well.
That's correct, but there are flower boxes here at the entrance and all
Right.
down the side of the building.
Right,
And so if you mandate that those have to be evergreens, that's going to infringe on the seasonal plantings and the colorfulness of that.
well, we could say year-round planting on the front, in the planters at the front facade.
Yeah.
And what other conditions do you have on your list?
Requirement of lighting
Lighting,
to,
flashing lights,
that notifies
to
pedestrians.
notify pedestrians
of
of
an
cars
exiting vehicle, right?
exiting the building.
And I would like to know what that looks like before we go off on a vote on that.
Well, I don't want to, I mean, myself, I don't want to bring them back a third time for that.
Well, no, I'm asking.
But we
this
could
is
just say, at the exit, on either side of the garage door,
It's gonna look like a firehouse, you know. You're gonna have red lights on either side of the garage.
okay.
Or do you hang them from the overhang, so that they're more discreet?
Can they be embedded in the ground? That's how the system is for the proposed system, right?
Well, but the proposed system is notifying the motorist inside the
Inside.
garage.
No, I know.
So she's saying if
But
there's
is
something,
there
that's
something comparable that works for,
Yeah,
it's the
outside.
motion detector that would, not just coming out, but going in too, that would be like built into, I don't know what exists, but maybe it could be looked into. I don't know.
Also, they're tripping hazard.
Well, if they can't find a system, they can come back and ask for that condition to be eliminated.
Which is gonna require them to file a complete new application to seek to modify a condition with, on notice to the public, just like a full-blown application.
Well, the alternative.
I'm just
Yeah.
letting the board members know.
So, was there any input from the traffic engineer, from anyone there?
There's been no traffic engineer.
No traffic engineer at all?
No traffic engineer. The board raised safety as a concern, and the applicant has come back with a system, hopefully that will address safety. I mean, remember, when you're a motorist in the state of New Jersey and anywhere else, you're responsible. You have to keep your eyes open, and you have to look for oncoming traffic, you have to look for pedestrians. Pedestrians,
Problem is
you
you
know.
can't see pedestrians from inside the building.
well, but you're pulling out, there's a 10-foot apron, there's a sidewalk there that's 10 feet deep. So you know, if that light is not flashing, I presume a vehicle in that garage is not gonna go charging out of there at 40, 50 miles an hour, because there could be oncoming traffic. So like any other time, you're gonna pull out onto the sidewalk, and you're going to look to see if any cars or pedestrians or bicyclists or anybody else is coming, you know, before you exit the garage. You know,
Well,
it's a typical precaution that you have to take.
What we may have to do, what I'm hearing is that we may have to have a separate vote on whether or not there should be some flashing light outside the building.
It sounds
Mary,
like
I know
that
you're
to me.
against it, but we'll have a separate vote and we'll see
Well,
where it
I
goes.
don't understand, I'm trying to be practical and also we heard testimony. And we asked them to address the safety issues, and I think that they have done that. I don't know how we can sit here and say that flashing red lights are going to make a difference in a pedestrian going by. Now, this is not a hugely heavily trafficked pedestrian way.
It will be.
Well, you know, maybe I'll take that back, but even if the development down the road at the bank comes into being, this is not a city street. So I think that we're just being, I think that's being overboard to get flashing red lights or something like that on
Okay.
Right, let me just ask you something. If you were an 11-year-old walking past or riding your bike, and you see a light flashing on the outside of this building, are you going to know that that light means someone is coming out of that garage? No, you're not gonna know that.
You're not gonna pay attention.
So my question to those members that want that exterior light, what value do you think that light is going to provide?
I'll tell you what value it provides. It's a couple of reasons. One, if the garage door had to be opened each and every time a car came out, I would tend to agree with you, because you'd see the door moving. But it's the intent to leave that door open. Two, you can't bet on people coming out of that slowly up until they get to the street. You just can't take that chance. Three, you walk by there, you see the flashing light, you're not sure what it's for, and you see a car come out. Okay, next time you walk by, you're gonna know it means a car is coming out. That's the way people learn things. It's not worth the risk of not having notification to the pedestrian that something is coming out of that garage.
I would like to have a separate vote on the issue of whether the applicant should provide exterior flashing lights at the garage entrance. So is there somebody who wants to make that motion?
I will make the motion that.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, I think we should have a roll call vote on this condition. Let's start here.
Mary McNabb.
No.
What about it being a condition?
Yeah.
Craig Plattner.
No.
Jody Sharma.
No.
Wait,
Wait, do you know
you
what
don't
we're
want the
voting for?
flashing light?
No.
Joyce Siebel.
Yes.
Steve Tover.
Yes?
Bill Payne Couturier.
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes. The condition is approved, 4-3. Okay, so now we need to vote on the C variances, the,
Height,
height,
loading,
height and loading.
right.
And we also have, and I think that could be in the same motion.
Yeah, preliminary and final site
Preliminary and
plan.
final site plan. And we have
And the waiver of
waiver
EIS,
of
which is,
the EIS.
We're doing them all together, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there was one more thing we talked about, which was a battery backup for notification in the event of a power outage.
To investigate that.
Well, yes.
He doesn't know if it's available. That was, I believe, his testimony, so. Is that how you want me to include that? Investigate battery backup to the
Yeah,
to the pedestrian warning system?
yeah.
Clearly, the door's gonna have to have a power backup, so it should, you know, it should be attached.
And provide if available.
Okay, we have a lot of stuff crammed in here. And the height variance, right?
Yes?
Part of
Height? Loading?
height and loading.
Preliminary and final site plan, waiver of EIS, and four conditions, along with the usual conditions.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Terry McNabb.
Yes.
Craig Plattner.
Yes.
Jody Sherman.
No.
Joyce Siebel.
Yes.
Steve Tover.
Yes.
Bill Payne Couturier.
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg.
Yes.
Okay.
It's gonna be a wonderful resolution
Oh, yeah,
to write.
it's gonna be a beauty. Thanks, guys.
Now we're back to our agenda. All right, Browning Road, we're not hearing. So we're down to Michael and Beverly Williams at 54 Old Short Hills Road.
Eileen, what do you want them to leave you?
Well, whatever the.
They look like they're just clipped onto the boards.
A5, A6, and I think A7 on those.
Yes. Ask permission.
Yeah, there was a handout.
I don't think the handout was ever marked, was it?
Yeah, it was marked.
Was it?
Mhm.
All right.
Well, actually, you took the exhibits from the last time, I don't think you got any of that. So I need A1 through A6.
So the other, I'll bring to you.
This is Williams, right?
Yes. Yes. Beverly, Beverly, Williams, Williams.
Michael Williams, Michaelwilliams.
We do have some photographs, if we could hand those out, is that permissible?
So,
How
it looks
many
like
do
you
you
have
have?
photocopies of them, or what do you have?
Yeah, it's a photocopy.
How many?
How many different photos?
Four.
Okay, but it's one package.
Yeah.
So why don't we just mark it as A1?
We mark it as A1.
Okay.
Hand it to our secretary.
Okay.
You didn't bring extra copies for the board members, did you?
We did.
Oh, well.
I brought
we'll
8
pass-
copies.
We'll
so-
pass it down.
Okay.
Pass them down. Can we begin? Can we start? Oh, I'm sorry.
Witnesses have been sworn, have they?
Yes, they have.
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Board. Again, my name is Dr. Michael Williams. My wife is Beverly Williams. I want to thank you for considering our application for a bluestone and red brick patio on our property. As you can see, this property is rather unique. Some of you may have been on the board before when we had the addition actually built. Our application for our patio represents the final milestone of our decade-long renovation and longevity plan for our 1884 home. We purchased the home 11 years ago. At that time, we completed a comprehensive renovation and restoration of the home and the grounds. Architecturally, we restored the home to specifications presented in a 1901 photograph of the house. Externally, we've reconstructed the front porch, matching the original design. Internally, we've renovated the home, restoring and renovating rooms, updating electrical and plumbing, and placing structural support and reinforcement beams throughout the house. On the property, we've completely excavated the backyard, removing over 1,000 stalks of 2- and 3-story bamboo, removing the previous owner's collection of discarded bathtubs, radiators, and other items found at recycling centers, filling the backyard with truckloads of clean topsoil, and planting grass with borders of flowers and trees. The final complement to the home is the patio, which will be built using historically correct materials. We met with the board several years ago when you approved the build of a small kitchen eating area and mudroom on the back of the home. We are here today to request your approval for the final milestone of our comprehensive home reconstruction, restoration, and longevity plan for the home, a small patio. We have brought some photographs, which you're seeing now, to show the current state of our backyard, and Mr. Jeff Agarian, our engineer, joins us today to explain the site plans for the patio, and we respectfully ask the board to approve our request for the patio.
First of all, are there any questions from board members? I have two to get started. In your photograph number, I guess it's the third of the photographs. On the left-hand side, that's the photograph looking at the back of the house. On the left-hand side of the photograph are a bunch of trees, evergreens, I believe.
Yeah.
Is your patio design, it's hard for me to look at the drawing and figure out exactly where those trees are. They will remain if we grant the patio request. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And the second question, which is just a confirmation, is that your neighbors to the right as you're facing your house have a rear raised patio. Is that correct?
Which, when you're at the
Is that,
street,
is that what they call it?
Yeah, when you're on the sidewalk facing your house, neighbor to the right.
they
The side
have
where
a
the
deck.
patio is gonna go.
The deck,
They have a deck.
They have, I guess it's
yes,
not a
Yeah.
raised patio, it's an outdoor deck.
yes.
Correct.
Okay. And is it also true that the variance you seek, which would be a variance relating to the required setback for the patio, would be on the side of your property closest to their raised deck? Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. We have a tiny yard, so
Yes.
there's no other space.
Okay. Any other questions from board members?
I just want to, so again, I actually have these, on the photograph, there's a number 2, so I'm looking at the photograph that has a number 2 on the bottom.
Okay.
And you see where the barbecue is?
Yep.
So, and I'm not sure, does the patio, will the patio go there, or will that remain grass, or does the patio go right up against the side of the house, in other words?
There's a little space
There
where there
is.
will be greenery,
and then the patio will be narrow in that part, and
Okay.
then come wider in the back of the house.
Okay, right, so then essentially, that area where the barbecue is in this photo, that's gonna stay green?
Where the barbecue sits now, yes.
Okay, and so more or less the barbecue will stay right where it is, or will you put it
No,
onto
the
the patio?
barbecue will go onto the patio,
Okay.
safer, and
Okay.
away from the house.
Okay.
It's butted up against the house right now.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
What's the
Questions?
distance between the fence, the existing fence and that edge?
I believe it's Jeff there.
I'm sorry.
This is the engineer, so.
I'd be happy to go
Well,
through
you
the
have to
site
be
plan.
sworn in.
Yes, I'm aware. I do. Jeff Egarian, Egarian, from Egarian and Associates, 271 Route 46, Fairfield, New Jersey. Licensed professional engineer. My license is in good standing, graduate of NJIT. I've testified before this board and numerous other boards throughout northern New Jersey on similar.
And you're appearing today as an engineer.
Correct.
Your qualifications are accepted by this board.
Thank you. So I'll quickly go through the plan and address your question.
Yes.
So to answer your question, the patio itself is approximately 3.3 feet from the setback line. And your question was with respect to the fence.
Yeah.
We don't have that dimension. The fence that's shown on the Langen plan kind of jogs in and out. So don't have an exact distance to that, but again, it is 3 feet, 3.3 feet from the property line. So I'll just continue.
Who owns the fence, do you know?
I'm sorry?
Who owns the fence? Your clients or the next door neighbor?
Is it?
The neighbor.
It is the neighbor.
Yeah,
The
the
neighbor-
fence is right on our property, it's right on our property line, but it's our neighbor's fence.
It's your neighbor's fence. huh?
Yes.
Okay, so just quickly again, we're looking for 3 variances. Accessory structures shall be located in the rear yard, where we're proposing the patio in the side yard. Accessory structure, side yard setback, 12 feet is required, and we're proposing 3.3, we just discussed. And finally, lot coverage, where 35% is allowable, and we are proposing 47.4. And ultimately, it's for the construction of a patio, some associated stepstones, and 2 small retaining walls in the back. The lot has several existing nonconformities which affect the project, specifically the lot area, where 20,000 square feet is required for the zone, and the subject property has 9,761 square feet, and lot width, where 100 feet is required, and this subject property has 65 square feet. It's the existing nonconformities of the lot that ultimately create the hardship for the applicant. The owners would like to install the patio off the finished floor to use for recreation. The configuration of the home, paired with the uniqueness of the lot, allows a limited area for the construction of the patio, and this is the most logical place for the patio. The project itself is going to have minimal impact regarding stormwater. Any stormwater generated by the patio will be controlled in a manner that will not negatively impact the adjacent lot. We are proposing a perimeter drain around the entire area, which will route and contain any increase in stormwater generated from the patio area. Grading in the area will be minimal. The existing grades will not be significantly altered as a result of the project. And lastly, soil erosion will not increase after development, which over what naturally occurs. In my opinion, the project can be completed without putting a measurement, and the property's unusual configuration and placement of the existing built dwelling on the lot create a circumstance which creates a hardship in the project.
Can you estimate the distance from the fence to the neighbor, the closest portion of the neighbor's raised patio or deck?
I can't, we don't have any survey information that would.
Well, you're an engineer, you've been out there, have you not?
I have, yes.
Can you estimate that distance? I know it's hard.
Yeah, You know, when I was there, I wasn't even thinking about comparing.
You weren't thinking about the neighbor's
Yeah,
deck?
I wasn't, no. And
It's gotta be,
It's pretty far.
it's gotta be, let me think. It would have to be, I'm gonna say 9 yards, 10 yards maybe. I'm not great with distances, but
So your best estimate is 27 feet
To 30
to
feet.
30 feet?
football field kind of thing. 10 yards, I guess, I don't, something like that. You're asking me for an estimation, I didn't.
Okay.
Of the fence to the,
No, the
No,
deck,
from their deck.
From the deck to the fence.
oh, deck to the fence.
so their property, I don't know, that's
Deck-
because it's our neighbor's property.
No.
So their deck to the fence, when we look over from our yard and look at it,
4 yards, 5 yards. From the deck to the fence, on their side of the property.
When you said
I thought you meant from
27
the
to
deck
30 feet,
deck
what were you estimating?
I was thinking from, you're talking the deck to the other side of the proposed patio to be on the driveway side. That's what I thought you were saying.
oh, you're saying to the end?
Yeah, to the
No.
end.
Okay, so that's not the right measurement.
No,
Sorry.
So the answer is you don't know.
Yeah, don't know.
Okay.
yeah,
Any other questions from board members?
How come you don't have the patio sort of wrapping around the back of the house? Why do you have it kind of extending off the back into the, more into the backyard? I'm just curious what
As
the,
opposed to what?
so you have it, I guess your objective is to keep this rectangular shape as opposed to having it, you know, where you have like this walkway to the driveway. Why isn't that where the patio is?
So that we have a little bit of lawn. There's not much property there. We have a side door that goes out of our basement. So you walk up the stairs, then
Yep.
you would turn left, and then the patio would come up behind the house. So we wanted the majority of the patio to be more behind the house,
Okay.
rather than on the side of the house.
And the retaining wall is because it's building it into a slope, obviously.
yeah, it's a very small change of grade, it's, you know, approximately a little over a foot, so it's just there to have easy transition and be a decorative feature.
So the retaining walls are decorative more than anything.
Yeah, there's not.
And the height of those retaining walls?
Yeah, it's 98.2, it's 1.4 feet.
So the scale of this, I mean, judging by the scale, it's what, about 20 feet by 14?
It's approximately 10 feet wide in this area, and this length about 28 feet.
28 feet. And how come it says 12'6" in the front? Is that from?
That's the side yard, that is the existing dimension from the house.
Gotcha, okay, that has nothing to do with the patio, okay.
10 by 28, you said?
Correct, yeah.
The patio is located based on access from the house, right? That's what I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
a finished floor,
Mhm.
and that's coming from the side stair closest to the front of the house?
There's actually two doors, so that there's a side door, and then you can access the patio directly from there in the barbecue. And then there's also the mudroom door, which is by our driveway, you can access it there. They're both closed, because it's a small strip of land.
And there's grass on both sides of that, small strips.
Yeah.
Eileen, do these retaining walls I guess they're included in the variance for lot coverage, right?
Yeah, there's no issue with that, they're required height, not more than 6 feet, they don't have to be a certain distance off the top.
So, but are they included in the request for lot coverage, or are they not?
They are, they're in the table.
Okay. Okay, so, but it has nothing to do with the side yard accessory or accessory setback?
Questions from board members? Questions from the audience? Now, this is for questions only, not comments. I see none, I hear none. Are there any comments from members of the public? Come forward to the microphone, give your name and your address, where your property is located in relationship to the property that is under consideration.
I'm the neighbor.
Oh.
Raise your right hand.
Sure.
You swear from testimony that you have been truthful, truth, nothing but truth.
I do.
State your name, spell your name, and your address.
George Eliopoulos, George Eliopoulos. I'm the neighbor. Sort of my attire, occasionally. My family sent me here to.
What's your street address?
Address of your
Oh,
property?
it's 48 Old Short Hills Road, Short Hills, New Jersey.
When you say you're the neighbor that has the raised deck in the back?
Yes, indeed. Mr. Chairman, I brought a picture too.
Okay, we need to mark that O1. You can give it to our secretary. She'll mark it O1 and we'll pass it. You have 2 copies?
Yes.
Well, one will be passed down and she'll keep one for her records.
So this is a picture I took from my deck. And the deck, there was a question before from the fence, is 19 feet.
19 feet.
And there's a 2-3 steps going down from the bottom of the step is another 15 feet from the fence.
So the bottom of the steps is 15 feet and the deck is 19 feet.
Yeah, it takes about 4 feet for the
Okay.
steps.
Proceed.
Yes, so we have lived in the property for more than 22 years. Our kids are now all at college, so one of those years we'll sell the property. And a valuable thing of our property is the deck. And from my deck, I took that picture. You see this lawn on my property, about 15 to 19 feet, and seeing a patio coming within 3 feet from my fence, it's something that we thought it would look a little awkward, in the sense that 22 years we've lived here, there's always side lawns in the properties we visit, friends and so forth, the regulations. So I thought that 3 feet was a little too close for comfort and aesthetic value to be that close to our fence. So that's our concern, and that's why I'm here to communicate that to the board, how important the deck is for my property. I brought one more picture to share with you, and there's 2 copies.
This is O2, and hand both copies to the secretary. She'll pass the second one down.
The deck's a good-sized deck. It's large and it's nicely shaded in the afternoon. We spend a lot of time there, guests and friends, and we're thinking like someone sitting there, and there's the fence, and 3 feet from that comes a patio. We're concerned about the value of our property as it could be affected by such proximity. So that's our issue. We want Mike and Beverly to do the best of the property. We just feel that bringing the patio that close to the fence is something of concern for us.
Are there any questions of this witness from the board members? Mary?
And can you tell us what your concern is? Is it the proximity of the patio neighbors there, or is it what happens on the patio, or what is your concern?
The proximity of the structure, only 3 feet from the fence, something we haven't seen in town. The houses we visited, friends, all those 22 years plus, they have side lawns, and we like the uniformity in the aesthetics of the town. It's something that would, we value, and
So you would prefer, instead of something impervious, you would prefer something like grass there, is that what you're saying?
yeah, that's the regulation, and that's what we would like to see.
So it's not the activity on the patio that concerns you, but just the construction of it?
Yeah, the structure that would extend that close to the fence.
The question is, if they're having parties on the patio at 3 feet from the property line, is that an issue for you as well? Maybe you haven't given that any thought.
But that's a secondary concern. We more thought about visually. We have our guests and our friends, and they look at the fence, and they see something that's so close. But
How long were you in the house before you built the deck?
oh, the deck was there when I bought the house, 22 plus years ago.
Any other questions from board members of this witness? Anyone in the audience have any questions of this witness?
Did we make initial comments?
Comments will be permitted now from your side and your side, if you choose to make any final comments.
We do plan to put some plantings alongside our side of the fence that's right on our property line, on our property, which we permitted George to move his fence closer to our yard just recently. Reason why we did that is because when Superstorm Sandy had occurred, George had a chain link fence and he lost many trees in his yard and it destroyed the fence, knocked part of it down. It kind of looked like a roller coaster the way it was. It was that way for 6 years and very upsetting to us because, as you can see from our property, we love our house. We love its aesthetically correct look. So we agreed to pay for part of George's fence to get it fixed so that it would look nice. And we did. So we do plan on putting some additional thinner bushes alongside the fence, not as thick as the other trees where you mentioned would they be leaving. Those come out further into the yard. These would be more narrow. But it would be aesthetically correct. I don't think George would see my husband's and my entertaining. It's just the two of us right now. Our children are grown. We don't party. Just want to have a place to sit in the yard. We don't have a place. So that's my comment.
Yeah, just want to extend that. The photo that you pointed out with the trees on the left-hand side, that's half of the property that's done, and those trees are already really quite significant. The plan on this was to extend it right up almost to where the grill is in back. So there's visually, virtually, there's no visual contact between the property with the plan that we put in place. So in terms of property line, that may be one concern. In terms of visuality, it's not a concern.
And why is it not a concern?
We're plantings along that side of the home now where you saw.
You don't show any plantings on your,
We can't just yet because you have to put the patio in first before you can do plantings, so that's what we were waiting for.
all right.
That's why there's plantings all the way up until the part where the patio will go.
You have any final comments?
And final comment, Mr. Chairman, would be the fact that putting plans, which they're not in place, but how would that be properly stipulated to have that? Their plans are there today, they're not permanent. And in other words, having plans over there would somehow mitigate the first concern to some degree that we have, seeing a structure coming up so awkwardly compared to the rest of our town, to the fence. So that's an issue. I mean, from my perspective, I'd be happy to see Mike and Beverly do something with the property that pleases them, but perhaps figure out another location in the backyard to put a patio and not bringing it so close to our fence.
Thank you. We'll close the public portion of the meeting. Board members?
Well, I have to admit, I'm a little confused by the design of the deck.
Patio.
Patio, pardon me. I don't understand why it wouldn't just be able to come right out from the back of the house. It would probably mean, making some changes to this little rock garden here, or trimming the turnaround a little bit or something like that. I'm just confused why this big rectangular patio is where it is. And then, of course, I wasn't really gonna, object or anything, but then the neighbor has a problem with it. And when you see the photos from the neighbor's deck, I think you can appreciate why he has a problem with it.
Well, this was
the other options.
This was one of these cases where you can't really see anything from the drawings. You have to go out there, which I did today. And the first thing that I saw was the proximity of this deck to this proposed patio. The proximity of the deck to the patio, or the patio to the deck. And I estimated basically the distance that was testified to. I came very close, just eyeballing it. And it struck me that if there was ever an instance where the mandate of the ordinance was meaningful in terms of the setback, this was it. And I don't think, from my own personal view, and I'm happy to listen to other board members, I don't think that in that 3 feet that's remaining there, you can do any planting that is going to significantly interfere with either, and block either the visual aspect of this patio or the noise that'll come off the patio. And in terms of the partying that goes on, the job of this board is to take a long view of what we approve here. So you're not gonna own that property forever. It'll be owned in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever, by somebody else. And we have to be concerned with both the visual aspect and the interference with the enjoyment of the neighbor's property. I'm also very, very concerned with the lot coverage issue. We're talking about a 33, virtually a 33, maybe 31.5% deviation from the standard in the ordinance. Now, we hear all the time from applicants that, well, that's true, but we have an undersized property.
Really undersized.
We have a, 9,000 some odd square foot property, where in the district, X number is required, so we have a undersized property. My view has always been on this board, where you have an undersized property, you have to be that much more concerned with how much of it is utilized. And here, we're being asked to permit almost 50%, 47.4% of the property to be covered by impervious material. Either the house, the driveway, and I'm with you. I don't see why that patio is where it is. I don't see why it's as big as it is, and I don't see, it seems to me that there are other places where it could be fitted in that would not require a tremendous lot coverage variance, because it could replace other covered areas where there's already impervious coverage. So I am not happy with this application. Board members?
I would agree. I mean, you have a patio here, as I mentioned, and the size, it's 28 feet. I mean, that's just giant. By 10, I mean, it's a huge patio, almost 300 square feet.
No.
No.
We've closed the public portion.
So, and once again, I also echo the issues that were made by Chairman Steinberg in the lot coverage. It's exceedingly high. And once again, the placement. It bewilders me that the placement in so much in the side yard, and once again, the size. So I would not be supportive of it.
Gail, I think that it would be useful for you to state
Right.
now what the law is with regard to a further
Right.
a different application.
So, Mr. and Mrs. Williams, what will happen now, if you ask the board to proceed to a vote, and you can clearly see there are a number of members that are not in favor of the application, and if the board were to vote to deny your variance request, you would have to, if you want to have a patio, you would have to prepare a new plan that is substantially different from the patio that you're proposing here. because there is a doctrine in the law called res judicata, meaning the matter has already been decided. So in order for that doctrine not to apply to a future application, the board would have to make certain findings, and it's basically that there's a substantial difference between what you proposed and what was denied the first time and what you come back with in a later application. You have a different alternative, however. You can ask the board not to proceed to a vote this evening and to allow you the opportunity to revisit this with your engineer and come up with a different configuration or placement of the patio so that it does not require such substantial variance relief. In other words, perhaps putting most of the patio behind the house as opposed to in the side yard. Changing the configuration so that it's not completely rectangular. You heard one board member express the opinion that, a 280 square foot patio is a pretty large patio. So you can ask the board not to go to a vote, to carry this case to another hearing date, to give you the opportunity to revisit the issue with your engineer and submit a revised plan for the board's consideration. Those are basically your options.
And if it's revised, whether or not they have to renotice, right?
Right. If there are different variances.
If you revise it so that you're eliminating some of your variances or reducing the extent of the deviation, then you would not have to renotice. But if you revise the application in such a way that by pushing the patio into the rear yard, that reduces your rear yard setback or reduces your rear yard unoccupied, and it creates a new variance that's not already covered by the notice that was sent to the neighbors, then you would have to renotice again for the new hearing date.
If you have, as counsel said, if you have new variances.
Right.
Now, one way that you might want to proceed is your engineer might sit down with some new ideas and talk to the zoning officer, who happens to be our board secretary, and make sure that she agrees that with the new plan you don't have any new variances. But that's really your decision. And I'm going to ask any of the board members if they have comments, and then I'll ask you. And if you'd like, you can go into the rear room. We'll take the next case. You can talk to your engineer, come back and tell us, yes, we want you to go to a vote tonight, or no, we would like a new date. The new date would almost certainly be the October date.
October 7th.
October 7th. So unless you just want to huddle for 2 minutes now and decide what you want to do.
We'll go back.
Fine. We'll
Okay.
take the next case.
We're gonna ask for a new date.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Oh, you are going to
Yes.
ask for a new date. Okay, fine.
Wait,
Then-
so you're not gonna go discuss it now and come back
We
and
know we want a new
finalize it?
date.
No, okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
you're gonna come back on October 7th.
yes.
All right, so let me make a formal announcement, public announcement. This matter, which is William and Beverly Williams,
Michael.
and it's, did I say Mike?
Right, it's Michael and Beverly Williams.
Michael and Beverly Williams. And let me get the number of the, it's calendar number 3705-19. This matter will be carried to the October
7th.
7th meeting of the Millburn Township Zoning Board of Adjustment, which will be held at 7 o'clock in this room at the municipal building. So.
No
we'll
further notice being required unless the revised plan results in new variances.
Thank you.
All right, the next case we're hearing is what did I do with, here it is. Saror and Constantin, calendar 3707-19, property location 57 Maple Street.
Yes. My name is Cristiana Savore, Cristiana Savore.
My name is Ying Li, Yingli.
Proceed.
Okay, on 57 Maple Street in Millburn, we propose.
Is the architect?
Yes, I'm an architect.
Yeah, you have
So
to
you
be
have to-
qualified.
Give us the benefit of your education
Oh.
and your professional experience.
Okay, I'm registered architect in New Jersey and New York, and I'm an NCOP member, and I also have a planning degree, but I didn't practice planning, but I've been practicing residential architecture in Melbourne in the last 10 years.
And your license
I'm
in
licensed.
New Jersey is in good standing,
Yes, correct.
and it's in effect now.
Yes.
Education?
I have Bachelor of Architecture degree from University of Tongji in China, and I have a city planning degree from University of Pennsylvania.
And you were an applicant before this board some years ago, were you not?
Yes, I think this is my fifth time testifying in
Okay.
Melbourne, board, BOA. So, 57 Maple Street in Melbourne. The project is basically proposed two-story addition. We are demolishing a one-story slab-on-grade den on the side of the building and propose two-story addition to accommodate a larger kitchen and a master suite on the second floor. It's in the R5 zone, and the lot area is about 0.37 acre. And it's the intention of the owners to keep the scale of the addition modest, so the overall FAR is well under the 30% allowed. So we are at a 16% FAR, with basically is half of the. It's the owner's intention to keep the scale of the addition modest, and then to keep the character of the house on that street. And the variance we are seeking is the front setback. The existing front setback is non-conforming at 29.78 feet. The proposed addition is set further back at 33.28 feet, which lessens the existing non-conforming situation. Having the addition set to answer the question in application form 14, to have the addition set at the required 40 feet front setback would put much of the patio and the backyard in the shadow. That will create a dead corner in the back of the house, and it will significantly decrease natural light to the existing dining room. So basically, we are seeking variance to a non-conforming condition, but we are actually making the situation better.
I just want to correct one thing you said. You said that, if I understood it, or I'll ask you to amplify this. You said that the new addition that you're building is 33 and some feet back from the.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And you said that will improve the existing condition. It doesn't really improve it, does it? Or does it?
I guess it lessens the non-conforming situation.
In what sense? Why does it lessen?
Because right now the existing front setback is 29.
And it will remain 29.
No, we're setting the back.
No, your first
No.
floor will remain at 29.
I think
The
this
rest
is,
of the
this
house
is what
will-
is meant.
Uh-huh.
The existing 29
Oh, I see.
29.78
Yes,
foot
yes.
front yard setback will remain. But your addition will be
Addition.
more,
Yes, yes.
will be closer to conforming than the existing
Yes,
house.
yes,
Okay.
yes, that's right. I apologize
Not a
for
problem.
being not specific. Basically, yes, the existing non-conforming front setback remains.
Okay.
It's the addition that's further, 4 foot further setback.
Now, the portion of the property of the house that is being demolished,
Yes.
how far is that setback from the street?
Right now, it's at the
The same.
flush with that.
It's
Yes,
flush
the
with the
same,
street.
yes.
Okay.
The reason to have that addition setback, there are 2 reasons. One is architecturally, the addition, I'm treating the addition as a separate mass from the existing building. And then there will be details and architectural language that will be different from the existing portion. To have 2, a new and old side by side without on the same surface actually will be awkward. So instead, architecture-wise, you set them back. So they will be, because they are different things, so they will be read differently.
It'll be read differently.
Yes, that's the one reason. And the other reason is it's the owner's intention to protect the front trees. In the beginning, we were, right now, I think it's our intention to protect the 2 trees at the front. We will try to preserve the 2 trees. So the further back the excavation is, the better situation for the trees.
Right.
Any other questions from board members? Anyone in the audience have any questions of either of the witnesses? Well, we only had one witness testify. Anyone in the audience have any comments on this case? Close the public portion of the meeting. Board members, we have one variance here. It's a front yard setback variance. Mary?
I just want to say, I think it's a very sensitive renovation that you have the property.
Thank you.
I want to say that I think the plan is really good. It makes sense, and I think it sits on the on the site very well. Just aesthetically, I understand that you're trying to have a new language, and it really reads that way from the back. I find the front, for me, it's very unaesthetic. Like, it's very difficult to see, like, none of the windows line up. It seems very busy, and I think it makes a very bad match from the street.
The front,
Yeah,
right?
the front, I think,
Okay.
I understand the difference of the language. I just think it's kind of like, nothing from the original house is in any way continued to the addition, like none of the lines, none of the window sill heights, none of the top of the windows.
I think at the front, we were trying to keep
The main floor,
with
yes.
the existing. We have.
Wait, you cannot both speak at one
Please close
time.
the
I'm
public
sorry.
portion
All
of the
right.
meeting.
Okay, yes.
No, I'm just, that's the elevation I'm referring to. It doesn't seem in any way to integrate the new and the old.
Okay.
And I'm okay with it on the back, I understand that, but being that it does have a presence on the street, and I know this is not probably in our jurisdiction, but I still
Yes.
wanted to comment that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from board members? Is there a motion in this case?
I move approval.
Second.
Mary McNutt?
Yes.
Craig Whitman?
Yes.
Jody Sharman?
Yes.
Sharma? Joyce Hill?
Yeah.
Steve Torres?
Yes?
Wolfgang Torres?
Yes.
Rusty Steinberg?
Yes. The application is approved. Good luck on the project.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you again. And here's an old friend.
You haven't seen him in a while?
Where have you been hiding? Is your client here?
Yes.
Yep. back there.
All right. He prefers to sit. If we need him, he will come.
Okay, that's fine.
Two items I'd like to pass out. You want me to
So I
sworn in
first want you to qualify yourself. You have to be sworn first.
I do. James Weil, W-E-I-L-L.
Mr. Weil, give us the benefit of your education, background, and professional experience.
Licensed architect and planner, state of New Jersey since 1979. I have a Bachelor of Architecture from Miami University in Ohio and a Master's of Architecture and Urban Design from Columbia University.
And your license in New Jersey?
Just sent in the money.
And your license is in good standing?
Yes.
Okay. Your qualifications are accepted. Do you have exhibits that you want marked?
Yes, please. I have some to pass
Okay.
out.
Or do you
There are
have
two
a-
different exhibits.
Yes.
So pick one to be A1.
Just mark A1 in today's date.
And then you can tell us what each exhibit shows us.
And I see you have extra copies.
Yes.
For board members. If you would give the copies of the marked exhibits to Eileen Davitt. Thank you. Tell us what A1 and A2 is, then you can pass them out.
Okay, thank you.
So is A1 the aerial photo?
Yes,
Okay.
A1's the aerial and A2 is just the existing elevation. What we are proposing here, this is basically a ranch house that's located in the Wyoming Historic District on Chestnut Street. The owners wanted to, one, get more light into the second floor bedroom that's up there, make it a little more usable, make it a little more pleasant. The second dorm, which is smaller, is just to add to the design. It really just goes into a crawl space. We were approved by the Historic Preservation Commission. Houses mostly up and down the street are historic houses. You know, this is a newer house, although it's been here a long time. The problem and the issue that we have here is front yard setback. As you know, the requirement for front setback is the average of all the houses within, I think it's 200 feet on each side of the property, or 40 feet, whichever is greater. So we have to go by the 40 feet. So if you look at Exhibit A1, which I just passed out, you can sort of see where the front setback line runs down the neighborhood. So in reality, the existing conditions in the neighborhood are really not in sync with what the zoning requires. And if you look on my plan here, I'm basically just trying to make this point. We have a section here, you see the existing house, which 21.07 feet from the porch, patio, portico to the property line. And we're proposing 30 feet to the new dormer, which is in back of most of the rest of the house. And you can see the 40-foot setback line, which is another approximately 10 feet to that setback line. And you can see the same thing on the plan here. You can see where the line comes through, and on the survey, which you have attached to the plan, has a red line going through it. And so basically, you know, that's the situation. So, as I said, the zoning is not in sync with the established development. The benefits that we'll be proposing, as I said, this is a non-historic house in the historic district. It's not going to obviously make it a historic house, but it adds a little more character. We've added, you know, some arched windows. The house has window panes. We'll be continuing it, and it's important. It breaks up this ranch-style roof, which is, you know, very out of characteristic with the neighborhood. as far as being it's a nice-looking structure, more in keeping with historic nature, and it's not in any sort of detriment, and it does not harm the zoning because the zoning really is not in conformance with what is actually happening there. And I think I don't have anything further to say.
Questions of the witness?
Could you just take us through the math behind the variance you're requesting?
Required is 40. The existing front portico is 21 feet. The proposal to the dormer, which is 30 feet. So you have a portico here, and then you have a garage also, and then you have the main part of the house, which is back here where the bay window is. The garage comes out, the portico comes out furthest, then the garage, and then the part with the bay window. This basically would be sitting over and with the same elevation as this section here. So it's roughly it's a 10-foot deviation from what is required, although it is of the existing structure.
Right.
It's the lesser.
The application is saying 30 feet 1 inch. That's it, right?
That is correct. Yeah, 0.07, I think
Okay.
that's like 1 inch.
Any other questions? Anyone in the audience? Well, let the record show that there is no one in the audience at this point other than the applicant who is alone. So I won't even ask if there's any questions or statements by the audience, and I'll close the public portion of the meeting. Board members, any comments, motion, whatever?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Mary McNabb?
Yes.
Craig Plattner?
Yes.
Jody Sharma?
Yes.
Joyce Siegel?
Yes.
Steve Tober?
Yes.
Wolfgang Peters?
Yes.
Joseph Steinberg?
Yes.
Thank you.
I do have to say legally, is there anyone in the audience who has a matter to present to the Zoning Board of Adjustment that is not on tonight's agenda? I hear none. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
See you guys on September
16th.
16th. So you have a nice long break here. For those of you who were expecting